Hey, that's it. We are live. Today is Wednesday, the 9th of May, 2018. On the panel with us today, there is Vinny from Holland, Vinny TV from Holland. We have Astral, who is an Englishman living in Denmark, Patricia, UK. We've got Josh from America, and our special guest, Brien Foerster from America, but he doesn't live there now, do you? I think you live somewhere else. But anyway, special guest, Brien Foerster. So thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So you're always making videos. You're always visiting things.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd say a little bit about you because obviously I think a lot of people know exactly who you are, but I will just read a little bit. You were born in Minnesota,
mm-hmm.
but you grew up in Canada. And at the age of 11, you started to become fascinated in native art and native people. And you began carving and making totem poles and learning from native teachers. And then you got your honours Bachelor of Science degree. Mm-hmm. And then you decided to take up carving and sculpture full time at the age of 25. You made 13 full-size totem poles, dugout canoes, masks, bowls, boxes, all in the native style. And then in 1995, you moved to Hawaii and you became a project manager for a 62-foot double-hull sailing canoe, which is a bit like a catamaran. And then that led into you having your own business internationally.
Mm-hmm.
Then came Peru, and there you wrote a book about, it's called A Brief History of the Incas. And then comes the bit with the megalithic works of South America with the elongated headed people, and that's in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
That's you. And I would so love you talking a bit about these skulls.
Sure. Well, there are about 2,000 years ago was the most common time where there were people with elongated skulls, mainly the result of cranial deformation, but in lots of different parts of the world, like the west coast of Africa, Melanesia, different parts of Europe, including the area of Stonehenge. The long barrows are supposedly the burial places of people with elongated heads.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, you should look up the work of Maria Wheatley. She wrote a book about the fact that the long barrows were for people with elongated heads and round barrows were for normal people.
Can we just explain to people, Brien,
sure.
Those, what it is a place called Silbury Hill, about 20, 30 miles from me, which I've just found out that you've been to, and you've been to Long Barrow. And yeah, you really like it, don't you? Just saying how much you like the countryside there and how much you like that part of England.
Yeah, it's I love England. I've had a fascination since childhood. I first went when I was 16 with a friend. We traveled without parental escort for 3 weeks all over the place. I got to visit Stonehenge late one afternoon when there was no fence around it. It was just amazing. And my main interest was in castles and King Arthur, but you know, there's so much in such a relatively small country that England, yeah, the energy of these places is also it's just so wonderfully calming.
Yeah, there's an awe, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so I was digressing because you were going to talk about the skulls, but it was just very interesting to learn that you have been to the UK, you've been to Silbury Hill, you've seen the Long Barrow, you've seen all that, and that you're coming back later on this year.
Yeah, in September. So that'll be great. Going to a UFO conference the 15th and 16th of September. I think it's called Helmworth in West Yorkshire. And then we'll be coming down to the area of Glastonbury to meet up, hopefully with you and other people, and explore more.
Yeah, I'll have to go and see which day you're over in the UK for this then you're going to Silbury Hill. I can ask you anyway, can't I? But that would be, I'd love to meet you. And yeah, at the pyramid.
Yeah, great.
I did say to you, though, that in the UK, a lot of people will not know that it's a pyramid yet. It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, and it's so obvious. As soon as you see it, it's like, whoa, perfectly symmetrical, massive. The amount of effort to construct it, it's not on par with the Great Pyramid of Egypt, but still, it's a hell of a lot of work to build something like that. But if you want me to continue with the elongated skulls, then the most predominant ones are located in Peru and Bolivia. And here, especially where I am, it's the area called Paracas on the coast of Peru, south of Lima. This is where one specific people lived. Archaeologists called them the Paracas. And through the course of study, because there's almost zero scholarship about these very odd-looking people, I took it on myself to study them. And what I've learned over the course of time is that they had genetic red hair, a darkish red.
Wow.
They were likely 5'10" to 6'2", which is very tall for a Peruvian native person. They probably had green eyes, light-colored skin. And we finally did DNA testing, quite extensive. And if they were native people of the coast of Peru, they would be of haplogroups A, B, C, or D. That's what all native South American people are. And the very controversial results that we got were actually that most of the samples pointed to haplogroups, which is your genetic ancestry, of U2E, U2E1, H1HK, H2A, J1B1, R, and B4. So the only samples that showed evidence of Native American ancestry were two. The rest of them were all of haplogroups found generally in the area of the Black Sea and Crimea. So they obviously emigrated.
Right. So just asking you, because these skulls are different, aren't they? They're not the same. Have they been bound, or are they actually that shape?
Well, what it's turning out to be is that the original people had natural elongated skulls, and 25% larger brain capacity than what we have in general. There's no sagittal suture here at all. Their eye sockets are larger than normal. They have two holes in the back of the skull, small holes which are called foramen, which are for blood and nerve flow, and also their foramen magnum, which is where our spinal column and vertebra enter the skull, is 2.5 centimeters back from normal. So that's a genetic characteristic. That's not binding. So that makes them at least a subspecies of human being, if not something more complicated.
Are they more? Do you think they're more advanced than we are, or less advanced than we are as skulls?
Well, in terms of technology, they had basically nothing compared to what we have. But their artistic skills were incredibly advanced. Their society was very complicated. The territory they covered was quite vast and heavily heavy agriculture in a desert climate, because this is desert where I am, and all of our food comes from 20 miles away, more or less, and it's been under cultivation for at least 3,000 years. So that way they were very complex.
What does it mean if these two holes in the back of their head then?
Well, actually, we have them in different places on our face. So we have two here, which are called foramen, and this is where blood and nerve flow comes out in order to oxygenate and feed the facial area, because it's pretty far from where the spinal cord is. So the two holes in the back of the skull were because their skulls were naturally longer, and so that was for blood flow to the upper area of the elongated skull.
And what does it mean that they didn't have this line, or down that they didn't have this extra bit in the top of the head? You said they've got a bit missing, just got a line.
Yeah, well, we have basically four, like us, we basically have four plates. So we have a suture here that comes this way, then one that goes sideways, and then another one in the back. And when a baby's born, there is no bone, it's all cartilage. And that's the way that the birthing process, it makes the birthing process easier. And then over the course of 2.5 years, then the calcium builds up and the plates grow together, leaving these suture lines. That's where they meet, and then the genetics tells them, okay, that's it, stop. The lack of one here means that the whole hip structure of the female would be different. And I've shown these to more than 30 medical professionals from around the world, and they just look and say, that's not possible. There has to be a suture. Where is it? And it's not there.
So what does that mean for you then when you're looking at this?
Well, again, it means they were at least a subspecies of human being, not recognized yet by science, and that they migrated from a different part of the world, and academics don't want to study this subject whatsoever. So I'm left with it.
So do you have difficulties when because obviously you're finding different stuff, do you have difficulties with information and where to go yourself?
No, not at all. That's the great thing, because academics have done basically nothing in regards studying this very odd culture that I come from a scientific background, so I'm able to access and converse with medical people without too much of a problem. And so I guess I'm becoming the expert on this and some other oddities that are present in Peru and other parts of the world.
There is a question in the chat room from Skyfly. He just wanted to know, ask him if they're Egyptians.
No, because we did the DNA testing, we've been able to filter out who they could have been and who they couldn't have been. The haplogroups I've described, you can find in all sorts of different places, but it's based on migration. So, there are people with some of these haplogroups that ancestors are from Ireland or Spain or whatever, but the commonality is the Black Sea and the Crimea area. There is no actual physical evidence that any ancient Egyptians had elongated heads. That was depictions done during the time of Akhenaten and Nefertiti during what's called the Amarna period. And I think what he was hinting at was that that's what his ancestors looked like, that they were very highly evolved and very different from what we normally think of as dynastic Egyptians.
Is there a link to this? Because you said that you're going to a UFO alien place. In England, you're going to go to a conference or talk, but Tommy in the chat room, he's put, so are they not human then?
Well, they're at minimum they're a subspecies of human. It could be more exotic than that. I mean, some people could get into the idea that they're human alien hybrids, but I can only base what I'm saying on the actual scientific evidence, not on what's the possibility? It's like the possibilities are endless, but what I've said so far, we scientifically know that, and academics will not touch this with a 10-foot pole. So that's why I make YouTube videos.
Do you know why that is though? That's because you're going to change history. That's why.
Yeah, but that's what the internet's for.
Can I ask you a question, Brien?
Sure.
How many skulls did you find? And was it only skulls, or did you find more, like bone parts, I should say?
Oh yeah, there are 400 complete mummies in the storehouse of the National Museum in Lima, but you're not allowed access to them. We have a little museum here that has 45 of them. I would guess that about 4 or 5% are the natural ones. So there's also a warehouse or storage place that the National Museum has in Lima that has 10,000 ancient Peruvian skulls, but again, not allowed access to it so far. But there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people at one time who had naturally elongated heads.
I just, I didn't actually ask you before you came on, but I don't know whether you noticed, but we're a flat Earth group, and we feel that nearly everything we're told is a lie, and it's all to cover everything up, whatever it is. We don't know it all, but it's all a lie to cover things up and to stop us being able to go back and find back our history. There's just such big gaps because things have been taken away or destroyed or not told to us properly. I mean, I think you will agree, like the pyramids, they weren't built by the Egyptians, were they? They were built before them, and they're another race of people who have vanished.
Yeah. Well, again, what I'm trying to do is put science into the equation. I was just in Egypt a month and a half ago or less, and I just finished. I had to write a second volume of Lost Ancient High Technology of Egypt because the stuff we saw this time was just so bizarre. But definitely, the scale of the Great Pyramid system, of which there are more than 8, you see the precision. There's no way the dynastic Egyptians built those. They found them. They found them cataclysmically damaged. And so I date the Great Pyramid and other structures found around the Giza Plateau, which is the oldest part, at being at least 12,000 years old. Not 6,000, or 5,000, which is the standard dating of the beginnings of the dynastic people.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to have a quiz the other day, but we just couldn't do it. We couldn't even ask the questions anymore because everything is a lie. So most things are a lie. So you couldn't actually include any of them anymore. So does it annoy you what they've done about the pyramids?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's all of this stuff has been covered up for so long. There's almost like a cabal, like the Egyptology is almost like a cabal where they all agree on history without doing any scientific testing. That's one of the problems with archaeology, is it's not a hard science. So they don't bring geologists in to look at the weathering on the Sphinx and say, well, how long would that have taken? 200 geologists all agree that the Sphinx has to be at least 10,000 years old based on the weathering itself. So that's where we're moving. We're moving into bringing scientific evidence into the whole study of all of these ancient places in order to prove that the standard timeline is wrong. And they can't, the academics can't refute this stuff. All they can do is keep very quiet.
Are you under the, because like as you get into this and every video you watch, someone's got something else to say, but a lot of people are looking into like maybe these stones weren't as big stones that they moved, they were actually like poured. What's your take? Do you, because I mean there's big stones sitting, you're walking on these stones, and then the pyramids have been built on top, so there's these huge great, not everywhere, but there's these huge great stones on the ground. They put those in before they put the pyramids up.
Yeah. No, it's, I think it's Davidowitz is the man behind that theory about making concrete. The problem is the technology that would be involved would be like it would be much more difficult to do it that way than actually cutting the blocks and putting them together, because you'd have to grind the limestone into the consistency of flour. So that means machinery. You'd have to grind it up. You couldn't have people just bashing away at them. What is probably true, and that's what I saw when I was there last time, is there's a kind of cement in between the big blocks, and that could be a geopolymer that was made in order to tighten the fit of them. But the idea that 2.5 million stones were poured is honestly ridiculous.
But it's absolutely amazing. Like these pyramids, they're not even like, oh, a foot out here or 10 inch. They're actually just amazingly built.
Yeah, Well, actually, especially when you go to see where the casing stone is still in place, that's the outer layer, which is pure calcium carbonate from a quarry 30 or 40 miles away, and there still are some intact, and you can't fit a human hair in the joint. I mean, this is perfect fit. That requires very high technology to do. You can't do it with copper chisels or something, which is still the argument that the academics made, that they used bronze chisels, you know, to build this thing that's 500 feet tall and has a footprint of 13 acres. It's, you know, they're losing the argument rapidly.
So how do you think they were built then?
Very, very advanced technology. In some ways, the technology they had, whoever they were, is beyond what we have, because it's the sheer scale and the accuracy, which is amazing. The same with what we find in the highlands of Peru. And one of the most important points is the stuff that we find in Egypt, the oldest stuff. You know, there's a lot of stuff the dynastic Egyptians built, but not this, you know, hyper scale stuff. Also Baalbek in Lebanon and Petra in Jordan, and the megalithic work in the highlands of Peru and Bolivia, some stuff in Turkey and Easter Island. It had to have been very advanced technology, probably including the ability to levitate stone. And so we're talking levels of technology beyond what we're physically capable of.
Just changing the subject absolutely completely, but I've just seen this question by Skyfly again. He said to ask you about giants. What's your take on giants?
Well, there's so many stories about giants, whether it's in the Middle East or in England or in the United States or Patagonia, or, you know, practically everywhere they talk about them. It's highly unlikely that somebody all around the world would make up the same story. I don't believe, well, of course, Goliath, you know, I don't believe the giants were necessarily 15 feet tall or something, but they could have, you know, technically they could have been easily 7 feet, 8 feet, maybe 9 feet tall. And most ancestral people were relatively short around the world, like maybe 5 feet, 5'5". So somebody 8 feet tall would be a giant to you. Of course, there's the story of the Nephilim, the Nephilim in the Bible that were wiped out by Joshua and Caleb when they entered the Promised Land. And so many Native American stories about them that I definitely believe that they were probably also a subspecies, and that the academics, especially in the 19th century, spent a lot of effort either destroying or hiding away the giant remnants that were collected. There's probably a lot in warehouses of the Smithsonian in places, and one could be discovered tomorrow. You never know.
You just said that the pyramid people were very advanced or with technology and stuff, but you just called them subspecies, like the elongated heads. So what do you mean by subspecies then?
Well, I'm not meaning sub as in below. I'm talking about they could be related to us, but I don't think, especially in Egypt, I don't think they were human. I think they were probably humanoid. Because we're not smart. I mean, we're not smart enough to be able to do that kind of stuff that I was looking at, including there's a major site called Saqqara where there are tunnels that you're allowed to go into that have 25 boxes that each weigh 100 tons apiece. And each box is made of 2 pieces of stone. And that's, again, something that would be very difficult to make to this very day. You could make them out of 6 pieces of stone, but making them out of 2 with astonishing precision would be very difficult in the 21st century. So I try not to automatically jump into it was all done by aliens, but it could have, you know, maybe it was aliens or Atlanteans or something like that. But I don't think it's our ancestors. I think it's somebody else.
Yeah, I even saw the other day that there's some pyramids on Tenerife.
Oh yeah, Yeah.
Oh, someone's trying to call me. Do excuse. Yeah. So I mean, these pyramids, they're everywhere.
Oh yeah, all over. Yeah, basically almost everywhere, except, well, actually North America has theirs too. But probably the most interesting ones are the super ancient ones, like at Giza, which again were built more than 12,000 years ago, before the end of the last ice age. And North America was completely covered in ice. Most of Europe was covered in ice. So you're not going to find super ancient artifacts, I don't think, in those areas. But Egypt was ice-free. The highlands of Peru and Bolivia were ice-free. So that's why we see pretty concentrated stuff in these areas, because they were damaged by war and time and cataclysm, but they're still there.
Mm. Do you believe the history side of things anymore? Because none of us are sure anymore whether, you know, if they're likely to tell you it's this old, it's probably even older or younger. It's never what they tell you, because they've lied to it so much. So do you believe this length of time? Do you think it could all be shorter?
No, I don't think so. I think it's quite an extensive time period. One thing that they're trying to do, whether consciously or subconsciously, is to control information, because by doing that, that controls us. So if you say, well, civilization goes back 5,000 years, and before that everyone was living in villages, and before that they were hunter-gatherers, then you go, oh, well, not a very impressive history for us then. But if you extend it to 12,000 or 50,000 years and you show evidence of very advanced high technology existing, then it's both a humbling and also a releasing process for us, revealing that our history is way more complicated than what we were taught.
But I suppose someone like you is exciting, because you're here and there and everywhere.
Yeah. I visit I visit the archaeological sites more than any of the academics do. So it's fun.
Which is your favorite bit of it then? The skulls, or more like the pyramids, or?
They're different kind of pet projects, and they're all different. So the elongated skulls fascinate me because my wife and I live literally in the area where they once lived 2,000 years ago. So that's interesting. And the highlands of Peru are fascinating because the megalithic work was done long before the existence of the Inca people that academics insist built all this stuff. Egypt, but also the stuff in the highlands of Peru is much more, it's megalithic, but it's organic, which is, you know, it's very artistic, whereas Egypt is very left brain and linear. So very different mindset was involved. Probably my favorite pet location is a site called Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, which is in Bolivia at 13,000 feet above sea level. And it is simply so bizarre. I've been more than 50 times, and I'm going back next month, because that place is fascinating, and it's slowly revealing itself to me, like one page per visit.
You understand more every time you go back.
Yeah, it's like a book is open, and I'm given one page to read, and then they close the book again. It's like, you have to come back if you want to know more, because
I'd like to say thank you so much to people like you, because, you know, without moaning too much, they've got us looking into space and all that crap, and it's all lies. They've got us looking up there, and there's not that many people looking at actually what we're living on, what's really there. And I very much appreciate it, because I would like to know who who built the pyramids. That's what I'd like to know.
I know. And actually, the great thing is that places are opening up now. So Egypt was really tightly under control. Again, I think mainly by foreign academics who have a certain paradigm that has to be obeyed. But the new Supreme Council of Antiquities director has decided to open sites up that have been sealed off for probably hundreds of years. And one of them is called the Osiris Shaft, which is located on the Giza Plateau, pretty close to the Great Pyramid. And we paid to have the door open, and we were able to go more than 200 feet underground into the bedrock of Giza. It's just mind-boggling.
So what did you see down there then?
Well, it's a shaft system carved into the bedrock. They open the rusty door, and you walk in like sideways into the opening, and then you look down, and there's a ladder that takes you 30 feet down, where there's a chamber that's, I'd say 20 feet by 40 feet. And then you walk to the end of that, and you look down, and there's another rusty ladder that takes you down 100 feet. And then you're in another series of 6 chambers, or 6 niches. There are 2 boxes in there that weigh probably 40 tons apiece. They look like they partially exploded, not from tomb robbers, but by some incredible force. And then you look down again, and you see water, and you climb down another rusty ladder 60 feet, and you're in the water, and there's a giant, probably 100-ton box underwater in the lowest part of the shaft system.
I know, it's quite incredible, isn't it, how they
Oh,
did
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
You sound like a proper little Indiana Jones with you.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking of the words of what you are. Yeah, he's an Indiana Jones.
Well, the difference is I don't say things belong in the museum. Things belong to the general, like to the global public. And that's the main reason why I do the YouTube videos. I was actually able to film inside there in 4K. So that video will be up pretty soon. But it's to allow anybody in the world access to so-called forbidden information that if you simply pay for it, you're given. We were given access to the Osiris Shaft because we paid them $2,000, and so they opened the door and let us go in for 2 hours.
Can I ask you, Brien, when you've been in the pyramids, obviously, right? I go, and you could actually, well, there was a tunnel. You weren't supposed to go down it, but I went down it. Yeah, there's some graffiti in this room. I can't remember the name of this guy, this Italian guy. Anyway, did you go down that? And what was that one for? Is it the Queen's? I don't know.
What, you mean in the Great Pyramid?
Yeah, it's a long time ago now.
Yeah, actually,
each shaft, no more than 1 meter high.
Oh, I know. Well, each of the 3 Great Pyramids and 5 others that are in the Giza Plateau area, they all have underground components to them. But the most extensive is the one of the Great Pyramid. It's a tunnel shaft that goes at a very steep angle, about 300 feet into the bedrock. And then you wind up in this unfinished chamber at the bottom. And it looks like it was never finished, like somebody was working on it, and then somebody else built the Great Pyramid on top of it. So that's one of the weird things about the Great Pyramid is what was it constructed, so much effort, what was it constructed for? It seems clearly to have been some kind of energy producing thing, as well as the other 7 pyramids. And then there is a whole tunnel system underneath the Giza Plateau that goes on for miles and miles, which we're slowly getting access to, that connect up to different sites. So that's what we're working on, is getting more of these doors open, getting high definition cameras in there and filming it, so that even if they decide to lock it the next day, it's too late, because I can pour all of this information onto YouTube and on my website.
Hey, really good of you. Do you find that you are opposed at all, or no one's stopping you doing any of this? Because, they've set life out in nice little rows, and it's not, we're all waking up to the lies.
Mm-hmm.
So do you get any problems, or are you actually able to see what you want to see?
Well, that's where you really have to play James Bond, to be honest. You have to almost be like a secret agent. You don't tell them who you are. You don't have any credentials. You just get access based upon what opportunity is available. So the Osiris shaft was an example of that. It's not that we bribed anybody. They just decided in November of last year to put a price tag of $2,000 for 2 hours access to it. So we said, let's go. And as far as things happening in Peru, the Ministry of Culture was given the DNA results that we paid for that cost $100,000. The government didn't pay for that, but they allowed it. And so we presented the results to them. They've immediately decided to do nothing about it. So that's why I decided to make a series of 7 YouTube videos that have been watched 1 million times, because this information belongs to the world. So as opportunities arrive, I just take advantage and go, you let me in here, so I'm filming, and bye.
Oh, well, we very much appreciate you doing that. And yeah, we have someone that comes on our channel a lot. He's called Angel. What he'd like to do is he can't make it today, but he would like to build his own pyramid. But he's very interested in those pyramids, those 3. And he was I was watching one of his videos. I told you right at the beginning when I wrote to you that the people may not realize that those pyramids are all on different heights, but inside they match up. Things match up when you know across, but they're all on different heights, and that he reckons they did have water around them. Do you?
Well, yeah. Also, they tend to be built on top of underground streams and rivers and stuff like that, like the famous Michael line that's in England that connects the ancient sites together. So there is energy which is naturally produced by running water, depending upon the type of stone or material it's moving through. So I think what the Great Pyramids were for enhancing energy that was being produced underground. And the reason why you needed the pyramid to be that size and shape was in order to be able to collect and concentrate the energy.
But they must also have a nice feeling when you go in.
Oh yeah, yeah. You automatically go into an alternate state of consciousness within like 5 seconds.
Robert Kidner, he lives in Mexico, and he's been to quite a few pyramids there. But he says that some of the pyramids have got horrible gargoyles on them, and they don't have nice feelings about them. So not all the pyramids have feelings.
Well, I was just in Mexico in January. We were there for like 14 days going to ancient sites, and I love all of them. The only ones I kind of get not angry or about, but sad, are the ones where they built like a church on top of it. Well, which is typical.
Yeah, they did that
and where they've torn down the pyramid or pyramidal structure in order to build the church out of that material. That's what the ancient part of Mexico City, that's what it is. They just tore everything to the ground and then rebuilt their stuff on top of it.
There's a couple of questions that come in that Vinny's picked up. He would like to know how is it really the situation? How do you feel about like people that the tourists are walking from site to site by themselves?
Well, the problem is that 98% of the tourists just go to these places because they're famous, not because they're especially interested in them. So I want my picture in front of the Great Pyramid. I want my picture taken at Machu Picchu, et cetera, et cetera. So they then will hire a tour guide, and the guide will be saying everything based on standard Western academia, which is all wrong. And these people are too stupid to ask a question and say, how can you prove that that's the case? How can you prove that bronze chisels were used to carve this granite stone? That's what got me into it. Is the first day I was in Cusco, I saw these monumental, complicated, ancient, damaged, megalithic places. And I asked my guide, what kind of tools were used? And he would say, bronze chisels and stone hammers. And No, that's not it. So that's what the whole process is uncovering this stuff, and that's where the internet is such an incredibly powerful tool.
It is. It's got us together for you to come on our channel.
Yeah.
Can I ask you something else? Do the pyramids all link up with each other, or would they have all linked up with each other, or were they all separate?
It depends. All of the Egypt ones were built in a very coordinated manner. So there are two at Dashur, which are the Red Pyramid and the Bent Pyramid. They're probably the same age as the Great Pyramid, the Second Pyramid, and the Third Pyramid. And then a couple of other places in that general location. But that's the most ancient part of Egypt is that area. Everything to the south is all dynastic stuff, and that's the most profound thing. If you start at Giza and then look around there, and then you float down the Nile by boat or whatever down to all the way down to Aswan, everything in between is kind of impressive, but not as mind-blowingly impressive. So that's what tells us that Giza is the oldest and most profound, and that all of the original pyramids were functioning with each other. That the size and design are probably based on the type of vibration or harmonic that each one was to produce. So the Bent Pyramid was not created as a mistake. Its literal translation is double harmony. So it probably set up two different vibrations inside.
Do you think that all this power in the pyramids caused problems, though? Do you think they got too greedy with their making this power?
Well, I honestly don't think it was power they were producing. I think when the pyramids were built, they were sealed off. Like you were not allowed inside of them because the energy would probably make you explode if you went inside. So they were functioning away, and then they were transmitting energy to the obelisks. The obelisks were like the Wi-Fi receptors, and I think what they were built for was to set up energetic fields in specific locations, which the dynastic Egyptians adopted, and from that point on regarded as sacred sites. So that's my theory of how they work. They still have energy inside of them, but maybe 100,000ths of what they were originally, and that's why people love to go inside and meditate, because there is still a pulsing energy that goes on inside them. And you do, at least I go into an alternate state of consciousness almost automatically, not just from the energy, but from the fact that the interior is huge in scale. It's just amazing.
So, yeah, I'm trying to add someone. Remember I told you about John Cowie? He's trying to get on at the moment, but he struggles a little bit when he first gets on the Hangout. But I've sent him the link. Now, he's the gentleman, you may have even met him then, but he's the gentleman that's been in Silbury Hill.
Ah.
So we're just, I'm just hoping he's going to come on now. I've sent him the link, but he might take a minute or two.
Okay.
Yeah, asking you then, there's another question. I saw this, but again, there looks like there could have been a fourth pyramid out there on that Giza plateau, a bit further out. DJ Joy Vision has asked that question. Are there four pyramids, or was there four pyramids?
Well, there could have been. There's some evidence that there was. We've never been able to find the actual footprint of it. Supposedly it was a black pyramid too, which is kind of interesting. Black as in black granite on the outside. So it is possible, but I don't know why somebody would have taken the whole thing apart all the way down to the foundation, because they literally, I think what happened to the Great Pyramid and the other two on the plateau is not that the casing stone was quarried. I think during the Great Cataclysm of 12,000 years ago that they were over-energized, and the skin, which is the casing stone, basically blew off the surface. And so after that, it was quarried to build stuff in Cairo, which actually is not even a dynastic period city. It was built during the time of the Islamic occupation. So I think that's what happened, is that there was this series of cataclysmic events 12,000 years ago. I think the axis of the Earth changed. That took all the pyramids offline, literally, energetically, and that's why they still kind of function, but not like what they did.
Thank you. And just at that point, you're saying that John has joined us. John Cowie. John Cowie, Brien Foerster. And John Cowie's the person that's been in Silbury Hill.
Hello, Brian. I'm sorry I missed the first part of your talk. I've been held up in another meeting, but very pleased to hear from
That's
you.
fine.
And I'll just sit back and listen to you, if that's okay.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Just to say to you, John, Brian's coming over to the UK in September, and he's going to Silbury Hill.
Wow. Well, we must meet up.
No, I'd love that. Well, we're actually going to Glastonbury. I don't know if you know Maria Wheatley.
I do indeed. Yes.
Okay.
We did a talk together about Stonehenge on a YouTube thing a few weeks ago.
Okay, great. Because we're going to actually be meeting up with Maria, I think, on the 18th of September, and hope to spend 4 days or so, or 4 or 5 days in the area. Just because it's such a intriguing part of the world.
Well, you can't find anyone better than her. She's very good.
No, thank you. I hear she has keys to Stonehenge.
She'll take good care of you.
Great, thank you.
Also, John, Brian's been to Silbury Hill before. And he was able to actually go and sit or go on it because it had no fence around it then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Well back. I just heard you briefly touching on about pyramids, and I did some exploration with English Heritage a few years ago, about 2007, 2008, and I think it's quite clear that Silbury Hill was originally built as a pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
But and it fits in with lots of discussions I've had with other people on pyramids on other continents. I've visited quite a few over the years in other places, and yet I'm also, like you, intrigued by pyramids.
Ah, great.
I also, just last thing to say, because I'll let you get on, Brian, it's your show. I did actually do a presentation at Glastonbury Symposium on Silbury Hill being a pyramid, so that you'll find that somewhere on YouTube if you're interested.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Well, it'll save me interrupting your conversation too much. So Brian, thank you. I made a note of that date when you're coming across with Maria Wheatley, and I will get in touch with Maria to see if we can meet up as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I'll let you get back.
Oh, no problem.
I was just thinking, Brian, you've been so many places, seen so many things. And the one thing you haven't been is inside Silbury Hill, which John has.
Yeah, I didn't know you could get inside Silbury Hill. That's news.
Yeah, it's all closed up now. There was only a small window of opportunity, and I went in it about 3-4 times and into the center of the hill, and that's why I was able to pick up some evidence or information.
Oh, wow.
To show something more than just a big pile of chalk. So.
Oh, wow.
That's because a part of it collapsed, isn't it? In the top, and then they burrowed in again, didn't they? And that's where John was able to go in. This was about 2002 or something, John.
The hill collapsed. Sorry, the hill collapsed in 2000. There was a big shaft which was dug down about 1753, and over the years that basically had caused some problems and it caused it to collapse. But yeah, that's this is a leaflet I did, which I won't bore you too much with, but again, it explains how a lot of information here about the evidence that was found to show that the Silbury Hill was in fact a pyramid.
Wow, anyway, that's amazing.
Anyway, I can talk about that when we meet up in September.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
By the time you get over here, Brian, there'll be so many people to talk to.
Oh, I love it. It's great.
Yeah, Can I just ask you then, how many pyramids have you been to?
Well, honestly, I would differentiate between the term pyramid and the term pyramidal, because pyramid, if you didn't know, is a Greek term. It comes from the Greek pyromedos, which means the fire in the middle or the fire within. And that was the Greek translation of from the Egyptian, because when the Greeks entered Egypt, of course, they wanted to know everything. And the Egyptian priests were very hesitant to tell them anything because they were an invading force. So when they pointed to the pyramids and said, "What's that?" or "What do you call it?" they said, "That's a perneter." And so from that, the Greeks decided to change it to pyromedos. And perneter means the house of nature or the house of energy, which again implies an energetic structure. Whereas when you go to places like Mexico, there are quite a few pyramidal looking things, and hundreds of them on the coast of Peru, but they don't have internal access to them. So that's the difference, is that the ones in Egypt, the core part of it is a very important part of its function, whereas most of the other pyramidal structures in general tend to be either adobe bricks or stones stacked on top without necessarily having a hollow core, though there are examples where in ancient times in Mexico, one pyramid is built on top of another and on top of another. And that was especially the case in Mexico City.
Is that done on purpose like that, or you just think that they couldn't help building?
No, it's probably because they were energetic to start with. And then with successive generations, they decided to make them larger and larger, so they would build on top and on top. One of them was built on top of 7 times, and there's another really intriguing place called Uxmal, which is in the Mayan area of Mexico. There's a massive pyramidal structure there, and we had the perfect guide because he was of Aztec descent. He understood the Mayan language. And so every time we would go to a place, I'd say, "Okay, this is called this, but what's the original name?" And he would know that. And so for Uxmal, luckily, a lot of the names in Mexico were not altered by the Spanish, but they have their original name. So Uxmal means built 3 times. So that tells you automatically that it has a very complex history. And there's a lot of megalithic stuff at Uxmal, like massive beams and blocks and stuff made, like 10 tons, 20 tons, which could not have been done by the standard Aztec or Mayan people. So again, it's a case of a very ancient place that existed thousands and thousands of years ago, discovered by another culture later on, and then altered or built on top of. So you find that in lots of places.
Asking you about the Sphinx then in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
we all know that that's not the right face on there, that's been added. It doesn't look not in proportion at all. If they were so into proportion of everything, the Sphinx isn't, the head isn't, is it, with the body?
No, it was definitely recarved, and that's proven by geology. Because why is the face in good shape, whereas the neck is eroded in by 2 or 3 feet? And the Sphinx is in what's called the Sphinx enclosure, so it's actually in a recessed area. And for most of its history, it's been buried up to its neck in sand, so they have to keep digging it out over and over again. Also, there's vertical weathering of the limestone, which has been proven to have been by water. So that's rainfall, and that's rainfall over a very long time. And climatologists state emphatically that that kind of rainfall has to be from at least 10 or 12,000 years ago. So that's twice as old as the dynastic Egyptians. And also what's called the Sphinx Temple, which is in front. There are blocks there up to 40 tons, and that is what was excavated from the Sphinx in order to make the Sphinx. So it wasn't hacked out by a bunch of dynastic people with bronze axes. It was systematically carved out using some form of high technology, obviously.
asking you with the Nazca lines and the fact that, you know, like we've got in the UK, we've got these white horses, you know,
Right.
but they are perfect seen from the sky. And a lot of this seems to be like Angel reckons that some of these pyramids, they look like they've got platforms, like they would have had like some kind of Zeppelin-y thing, you know, like they actually were using things to fly around in, because a lot of this stuff is to be seen from the sky.
Yeah,
What's your
well,
take?
especially Nazca. People don't realize how complicated Nazca is. They'll watch a video and they'll see 30 drawings in the ground, you know, 300, 400, 600 feet long. And they go, oh, those are the Nazca lines made by the Nazca culture. But I live 20 miles from one of the largest of these geoglyphs. It's called the Candelabro. It's on the side of a mountain. It can only be seen from the sky or the ocean. And so the so-called Nazca system goes for 250 kilometers from Paracas, which is where I am, all the way to Nazca. And they're the 30 famous Nazca figures that can only be seen from the sky. But also there's the astronaut, which looks like that. That's on the side of a mountain. And then there's an area called Palpa in between Paracas and Nazca that has 1,600 geoglyphs. They're not very big, but those were made by the elongated skull Paracas culture before the Nazca people existed.
Yep.
And are you under the belief like some of these Nazca stuff is all to do with the pyramids? It actually has what the dimensions of the pyramids are.
No, I think the trouble with Nazca is that they were created over the course of 1,000 years. So you have two different cultures involved. You have the Paracas culture, who made most of them, and then they were wiped out by the invading Nazca people about 100 AD. And then the Nazca people decided to make these giant outlines of natural-looking animals, whereas the Paracas were producing things like spirals and what looked like landing strips and half human, half insect figures and stuff like that. So very different mindset. Also, some of the actual lines of Nazca correspond to the solstices and equinoxes, but they also correspond to an underground system of water, because there is no rainfall at Nazca. All of the water that's accessed is accessed from underground. And so it's a complex story over the course of 1,000 years.
So you believe that they were using the sky?
I believe that a lot of them were made solely for being observed from the sky, whether by their god, who was called Kon, from where we get Kon-Tiki, or visitors or relatives, or I don't know who, but they put an incredible amount of effort into making them in one of the most austere, harshest environments on the planet. I mean, again, half an inch of rainfall a year.
The time and effort that's gone into all this stuff.
Oh,
It's quite incredible, isn't it, really?
oh, very.
We think we're so sort of, what do you call it, futuristic, whatever it is, advanced. And I think that the advanced bits come from the past.
Oh, I think very much so. I think ancient people were much more, and our ancestors were much more connected to energy on so many more levels than we are. And now we're we're reducing ourselves down to wanting to learn about a subject in 5 minutes or less, not going deeply into the study of anything. And all of this stuff that was done in the distant past are things that we can learn from. I mean, the concept of free energy, we could probably learn on some level from ancient structures.
Does it frustrate you, like you and John, when you've got like you're looking into things? Well, that's not what they're telling us. They're not telling us it was that way. They're telling us it's completely different. Does it frustrate you, or are you just enjoying the journey? Because you're very chilled out, I have to say, Brien.
Well, yeah, I don't get frustrated because I'm one of the ones, and I would definitely include John and many others, Robert Boval, Graham Hancock, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that are revealing all this stuff. There are thousands of us. And so, again, because we have access to air travel and the internet and high definition video and all this kind of stuff, we can do a lot more in a shorter period of time than a lot of academics can do, because they're under the constraints of their institutions, whereas we're freelance, we can do whatever we want, and when we get access to a place, we simply go.
Miss Karen, would you mind if I ask the two brothers a question?
Go on, Josh.
Thank you very much. My question is, when you guys go in these temples, when you guys go in these pyramids, how much of it feels authentic and how much of it feels tampered with? And on the other part of this question is, I was told that about 100 years ago they stopped carving out the hieroglyphs, pasted them with clay, and recovered them with paintings. Is this true, or is this just speak?
I don't think that's true, but the obvious giveaway is the interior of the Great Pyramid has no hieroglyphics whatsoever. And when you see any of the dynastic works, like the dynastic temples, everything is covered in hieroglyphics. The columns, the ceilings, the walls, absolutely no square inch is left without hieroglyphics. So that automatically tells you that something's going on, because whoever built the Great Pyramid did not want to bother decorating the inside with anything. The thing is simply form and function. And that's a very different mindset than during the dynastic times of, let me tell you the story of my life because I was such a great guy. So that automatically tells me that two different civilizations were involved. One pragmatic and one very possibly arrogant. Well, possibly egotistical, but a very wealthy civilization with a rich, history, a rich culture that wanted to express everything. Whoever the great megalithic builders were, they were just building stuff, which makes them even more mysterious.
Absolutely.
Right, so lots of different people then, lots of different cultures doing things. I mean, I kind of gather that we have to dig down, don't we? Because now that you're finding the granite sort of, well, whatever they were, palaces or temples, they're underneath other temples. They're actually, there's one out in the Middle East, isn't there? Jordan, I think. I can't remember which country it is now, where the granite one's underneath, and you can only go in it for so many months because it's got water in it. And then the one above is sort of crumbling away.
Yeah, that's what you always see. You see the dynastic people, wherever possible, built at the original location because they had a sense of wonder and awe at whoever it was that was there before them. You see that in Peru as well. Again, you have the case of churches being built on top of older temples, which of course you find in England and all over the world. And possibly the place that has blown my mind more than anywhere is Petra in Jordan, because most people are associated with what's called the Treasury, which was in Indiana Jones, and it's carved in the bedrock. But again, we went there with we brought geologist Susan Moore with us from Canada. And she, as soon as we got there, I looked at the stone and I said, "Is this sandstone?" And she said, "No, it's more like quartzite." And I said, "What's the difference?" "Well, sandstone you can shape with metal chisels. Quartzite, you need diamond technology because it's 7 out of 10 on the hardness scale, while bronze is 3.5. And so we walked a mile and a quarter to get to the Treasury through what's called the Seek, which is this very narrow tunnel-like thing. And that's where all the tourists were congregating. And I turned to our guide and I said, "How much farther does Petra go?" And he said 5.5 miles. So my wife and I walked 5.5 miles, and the Treasury is 1% of Petra. There are chambers cut into the quartzite bedrock. One of them somebody removed 300,000 cubic feet of material, and there's nothing in there. But
Wow.
that place is just, I was in shock because we had to walk to the end and back took 9 hours. With exploring each place, and you see the machine marks on the sides of the surfaces. It's not done by hand, and very similar machine marks to what we see on the Giza Plateau and also Baalbek in Lebanon. It might have been the same builders in all three places.
Yeah.
What's your take on? They look like the inside of a house. Like they almost look a bit like when you look at the catacombs in Turkey, how they're sort of almost as if they're cast on the stone, but then there's nothing else round it. Do you understand what I mean? They're like thrown. It's like these things have been picked up and thrown, and some of these are upside down. There's bits of stairs. What's your take on that? Because in our research group, we looked into things, and it could have been that we suffered these great big electrical arkings, which Avebury has an arcing. There's one at Glastonbury, these round circles in the ground. They're like arkings. There'll be a positive and a negative one. Positive one, when they're much bigger, trees grow around them. The other ones, the negative ones, they're mining them. It's quite clear if you use Google Maps that we've had these great big electrical arkings. Well, I was wondering whether the pyramids were part of this, with this sort of what they were doing, and they may have caused it.
Well, again, I think it was a series of cataclysmic events about 12,000 years ago. Very complex story. Took course over 200 years, maybe. It wasn't like a one-day event, like in some Hollywood film, but very complicated, involving comets and plasma from the sun, the rising of sea levels very rapidly, volcanoes suddenly triggered because of the increased weight on the sea floor. Also possible, as you say, electrical arcing. We were at a site a week ago in the highlands of Peru, which is megalithic, made of polygonal stones, and the stone surfaces are melted. That takes at least 2,000 degrees Celsius, and that's not somebody building a campfire. That's intense, almost instantaneous heat. Yeah. So very complicated, but anybody who, if you look at the work of Robert Schoch, too, he's very big on the solar plasma burst idea. Anybody or any life form in that area would be vaporized immediately.
Immediately.
So that's why all we have left are the stone structures that show, in some cases, fire damage or earthquake, like mega earthquake damage. There's a lot of burnt stone surfaces in Egypt. That there's a site you should look up called Tanis, which was vaporized by something. It's just completely bizarre. So yeah, that's why, for example, with the solar plasma, if it strikes a location, then it vaporizes everything in the area, meaning you can't go back. Nobody could go there for probably thousands of years because nothing's going to grow. Even at Tanis,
it almost looks like some of this stuff is melted.
Yeah, melted, and any organic life would be vaporized. And end of story.
Yeah. It's not that I actually want to go back and be vaporized. I was just going, I don't want to be vaporized or anything, but I so want to know the real history.
Do you think that solar flare that you spoke of could possibly be why Ethiopia is barren today, but was described to us in ancient times as a green land, lush and green?
That could be. I also think that that the axis of the Earth has changed like violently at different times, and that's why the woolly mammoths were found in Siberia with food in their mouths. They were like flash frozen. So that means the axis of the Earth shifted by at least 1,000 miles or a couple of thousand miles, and that would automatically change an environment. You would go all of a sudden from jungle to temperate, or from temperate to Arctic, or, you know, etc. So I think, yeah, it's a very complex story that I'm still working on. I'm never somebody who says, this is my theory. It's like, well, this is where I'm at the moment with it. And I just try to keep collecting more and more information and data as time goes on. And hope, so far, my ideas are being confirmed by more information. But if something, well, yeah, that's the way it's working. I don't think anything can make the ideas that I have suddenly become untrue, because I'm taking it from a scientific perspective, and that means that you have to be evidence-based, and you have to keep adding to to what you have, to the data set that you have to add more, and that goes along with the elongated skulls too. We have a fair bit of data, but I'm not finished with it. I'm going to continue on with it as time and finances allow, to see how much diversity there is, and how cohesive the ideas are.
It's interesting, Brian, what you say there about that. You have your theory, and you're kind of collecting evidence and information on it to try and confirm your theory. I got slightly the other way around, in that I produced a theory 20 years ago, I guess now, called the alien visitor gene theory. And I've gone through all these years, conferences and feedback and information, emails and so on, and I haven't come across anything yet that makes me think that my theory's rubbish. Mm-hmm. In fact, every bit of information I get makes it more and more plausible. And the theory is quite simple. As you go back 13,000 years ago, human beings were produced basically by ET. And so this kind of, either they genetically engineer Homo sapien, or whatever the idea is, and you've heard all these ideas before, but whatever happened, there was a level of knowledge on our planet then far greater than we have today. But over the centuries, through this transgenerational memory gene, as I call it, we are transferring this knowledge through each generation, and every generation, through the process of autism or whatever we call genius, there are people that are discovering things every generation, and we're slowly getting to that level of knowledge that we knew 13,000 years ago. We're still a long way off, but we are slowly getting there. Now, why are we taking so long to get there? Because I believe we have people on our planet, I call them elites, or the establishment, that are deliberately destroying information, deliberately manipulating our minds to believe that, yes, Stonehenge or the pyramids were 4,000 years old, the usual thing, blah, blah, that built for the tombs of pharaohs and so on, which we've all kind of gone along and believed. And again, you said a valid thing. People like you and I and Karen and others that are listening in here, we're all independent researchers, so we haven't got the baggage that some of the guys have got that claim that the pyramids were built for tombs of pharaohs and Silver Hill was a chalk mound, etc., etc. So us like-minded people, and more of us are getting together, sharing our ideas, sharing our thoughts and theories. And of course, the key thing happened. Well, what happened to this amazing ancient civilization that was developed by extraterrestrials? Well, we all know that about 10,500 years ago, there's this what they call the Younger Dryas global event that we don't know whether it was a meteorite strike or whatever it was, but it created a huge disruption to the planet. And we probably found that
5 minutos? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. No, we probably found that this huge disruption to the planet had a climatic effect. So places like Egypt, that you said, and Nazda, Peru, and so on, probably had a different climate, much more temperate, much more water around, trees growing, and so on. Mm-hmm. And we have proof, and we have proof of this huge flood, because we have animals, all different species of animals who would never be associated with each other, have been washed up into caves. The skeletons have been found mixed together in various caves in various locations. So that's just a small piece of information, but like you, we've all collected loads of information, but nobody seems to be brave enough to say, yeah, this is how it is. Because as you said about the pyramids and that place you described, we can't do these things today. We can't levitate blocks up so many 60, 70, 100 meters high and so on. It has to be done through some kind of technology that we still haven't discovered. And some of it, I think, we maybe have discovered already. But again, as I mentioned, because of the elites, establishment, and so on, a lot of this information has been hidden from us. We know about people like Tesla. We know about whole lots of other people we've probably never even heard of that have come up with amazing ideas. And even today, we find people who have invented things, and because of their project greed, if you like, they have been offered sums of money to have their invention brought up by big multinational corporations and so on.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's brilliant that people like us, we're on this similar sort of wavelength. We're sort of searching and trying to establish where things are. And like I think I know you've written a book. I produced my book called particularly Silbury Dawning, the Alien Visitor Gene Theory, which you probably won't bore you with too much. But again, the fact is, we've all written things down, and it's good to write things down so it's like my piece of the jigsaw, and you've got your pieces of the jigsaw that you're handing out for future generations to come along and explore. And maybe the answer is completely different to what my view is, what your view is. But I think we both have this key ingredient, and we all have here, is we're all very open-minded. I think that's what we must be open-minded. And this is the problem. There's too many people in the establishment, or the establishment archaeologists, who are totally closed-minded. And the last thing to say, just intriguingly, places like Iraq, Iran, and Syria, and so on, they've been devastated by. Well, why? Why? Because again, there's amazing secrets that are still there, because they haven't been uncovered. And I know even in Egypt, with ground penetrating radar equipment attached to connected satellites, we will start to discover sites which no one has been able to tamper with yet. And once we get in amongst those areas, then I think we'll maybe find some really amazing clues. But so far, where anything's been discovered, they were discovered by your aristocratic archaeologists who were basically kept quiet, or they didn't really know what they were doing. And of course, there was no forensic science back in that day. And certainly at Silbury Hill, when they were exploring Silbury Hill back in 2008, 2009, there was no forensic science used when they were collecting insects or collecting mollusks to date them. I mean, intriguingly, I dated some mollusks which I found in the center of Silbury Hill, which I sent off to the University of Mexico, and they dated these mollusks to 12,000 years old.
Wow.
Similar thing with flint flakes that were also found inside the hill. They were dated to that time scale.
Huh.
The final thing to say, Ryan, is that the one thing they found inside of the hill was an antler, which they dated to 4,500 years ago. And again, there's people that have done DNA testing on things like antlers, and they found completely different dates on the same antler, depending on how much limestone or particular pollutant has been included in the antler. So the same antler could be dated 4,500 years to 7,000 to 11,000. But the point I guess I'm making is this antler, it was found in the side of the hill, and there's this amazing conclusion that it was used to dig the hill, to construct the hill. And but the point is, they use this date as this point between the Stone Age, this period between transitioning from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age, and this 4,500 years date. They then fixed the pyramids, the Egyptian pyramids being built at this time. And I think even just my kind of feeling when I look at these sites and look at these places, you can see almost your instinct tells you they're way much older than 4,500 years old.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, I'm afraid I have to leave you now. We have someone at the house that has to operate a very powerful drill, so there's no way I can.
That's fine.
Keep going with it.
Got a little bit of an echo now, but we very much appreciate you coming on. The time has gone really quickly. You said an hour, and you stayed nearly you've stayed with us an hour and a half. So it was really nice meeting you and for you coming on. And I'm glad that you've now met John as well, and that you will meet him
September
later in
the
the
18th. September
In
the 18th.
September. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Brien. Very much
Right.
appreciated.
Okay, my pleasure. Thanks to all of you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
maybe you'll come back again
You bet.
sometime.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to say thank you, Brien. It's interesting, you know, and you'll have to let us know how things develop. You know, after your little trip there in Glastonbury, and let us know when you upload that video from your latest trip to Egypt.
Well, actually, I put up a new video every 4 days. So
Okay.
I have 6 in the queue right now. So it's my YouTube is Brien Foerster. So if you just put that into YouTube, then you'll find it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, my
Pleasure.
darling.
Thank you, Brien. Love you.
Big hugs. Thank you. Wow. What a nice guy. So calm, patient. 4 days to upload a video. He paces himself, doesn't he?
It's got a very good website, worth looking at.
And it's nice that you're here as well, John.
Yes, I'm sorry I couldn't commit because I was involved in another thing and rushed back, and I was very pleased. Thanks, Karen, again. Give me the opportunity to have a brief few words with Brien and of course the rest of the gang.
Oh, it's a
Nice to
pleasure.
catch up with you all. Nice to catch up with you all again. So thank you very much again, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll probably stay on for a little bit longer because we've only been on for just an hour and a half. Astral, what did you think then?
Brilliant. As always, yeah. You too, John. Like, you know, I mean, you're so well versed with all this pyramid stuff, and you know, you've been travelled around, obviously, written books. So it's it's great to hear from a professional in your,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Thank you.
Yeah, we've done quite a few evenings ourselves on history and megalithic structures and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're all very interested in all of that.
I forgot to mention to him, annoyingly, that Maria Wheatley is very much into these elongated skulls.
I think you did.
Oh, did he? Yeah, did he know that? Yeah, he must do that.
Yeah. Patricia, how about you then? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I'm fascinated. It's nice to get, I mean, you can watch a video and you can read books and that, but just to get someone actually talking and discussing things. I love the skulls and the pyramids and stuff. Really, really good. And it's nice to have John on as well. So hello, John.
Thank you, Tris. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you hear, I mean, obviously other people talk about it, but he's talked about there are all these generations keep being added now. There's generations of us, you know, different generations. So that's really great hearing that from him, that, you know, there's even the Nazca lines aren't the same people. They're 2 sets of people. Like the pyramids, it's 2 people.
And the brilliant thing is that you guys coming along, you got your own ideas, and there's new things happening, new things for you to analyze and to you know. I think the other thing that your generation has that we didn't have was we were kind of very easily confused or manipulated or distracted, whereas nowadays with what's available technology wise and with people like ourselves, you see, having these discussions, you can then go off and think, well, hold on a minute, is that true? What is that? And you can be more questioning, and this is what it's all about. And the thing I touched on with Brien, and he's the same, you've got to be more questioning, but also be very open-minded, always be open-minded.
I think what it is, John, your generation really are the ones that have been totally hammered with everything. The lies about, what we're living on, the history, everything, television. But and I'm not saying our generation or even younger, your generation, a lot of people now are beginning to turn their tellies off and come to YouTube and watch alternative stuff. So that's the good part. I mean,
I
some
agree.
of us feel frustrated that things aren't moving fast enough. But I said last night, my middle son, even sorry, I know that you're in between with quite what we're living on, but even graffiti now has flat earth on it. It's so good that it is these things are starting to go in people's eyes so they can see them, because people just don't think. They don't. That's what they wanted. They wanted us not to think.
Yeah.
I just asked Josh. Josh, are you there? Josh?
Absolutely. I
Did
believe
you
flat.
enjoy that?
Oh, more than you'll ever know. Both of them. I can't wait to hear more of what Brother John might have to say while he's around. But as far as the graffiti and things, you know, like Sister Roxanne did, you know, talking about the lighters and all sorts of other things, you know, it's a flat earth is a Trojan horse. You know, it's like, it's that one thing, like once you, you know, think about that, then everything else seems to fall in place. It's like, it's insanity. Like, even if you don't necessarily believe in the flat earth, once you realize that, like, there's some things and there's a lot of things that are irrefutable, which, you know, it is what it is. You know, it just, like I said, just connects lines. It's hard for me to say. I'm at a loss for words still, just listening to these brothers speak. So I really can't formulate anything. Sorry.
Yeah. The thing about why we go on about flat earth a bit, John, is the fact that to us, flat earth covers everything. 9/11, it's all the lies now, because it's all a lie. It's all a matrix of lies. So it covers everything, not just what we're living on. Just it covers everything. But as Josh is there, Josh, and we've got John still here. Is there anything you wanted to ask?
Is there anything that you want to tell? That's all I could ask him is there anything you would like to tell that you haven't said already? You know, like, as far as going to these structures, what structures you've been to, explaining what you've seen, explaining what you felt. That's all I could ask.
Josh, I think the only thing to say really is that the structures that we see now, they're all dead. It's intriguing that they're still capable of generating energy, still capable of generating electrostatic energy, but and I know the Russian scientists, they can measure seismic signals coming from the tip of each pyramid in Egypt. They all have their own unique signals and so on. So we still got these things around, and we almost have theories about, well, crop circles where their messages coming back, they've been transmitted out and they're coming back, but obviously they seem to be coming around places like Silbury Hill and so on, where that receiving device is no longer functional. It's obviously long since been destroyed. So it's quite difficult to say things without it being speculation. We can only speculate. We can't. This is the problem that we get with establishment people. They turn speculation into fact, and we've got to be careful we don't do the same thing, because everything I say is speculation, because it can only be speculation. E.T. arrived on our planet 13,000 years ago. They bred with and so on. But then, how do you explain why we're so clever and the rest of the creatures that are the nearest relative, like chimpanzee, are not so clever? You know, there are things that become quite obvious. I mean, we're all human beings are very clever. We're cleverer than we even think we are. We've got knowledge in our heads is just so incredible. Some of us kind of access it, like accessing a hard drive, quite easily. Some of us have problems accessing it because we've been conditioned probably not to access our knowledge. Some obviously through freaks of nature, through the development of the embryo, have become maybe autistic and so on. And I've come across many autistic people who work with me when I work for Intel in California, and their knowledge, they could see rows of zeros and ones, millions of them, and they can look at it and see mistakes in the code. And I've given up now trying to understand how these things work, because they're just these brains of these people, they're not wired the same as what we have, but they have highlight to me that that in our brain there's this amazing amount of information, amazing amount of knowledge, technology that will move us forward if we are not obviously listen too much to one of the biggest bugbears of society, basically politicians. And sadly, they exist. And without them, I think we would be able to develop things a lot quicker and a lot more helpful, responsible way.
Thing is, John,
That's another story. So I don't want to get too much into that side. Sorry, Karen.
No, oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
Karen. No, you carry on. Sorry.
They don't want us to be clever, though, do they? They don't want us to wake up and realise these things.
No, correct. That's correct. But I think they're finding it.
Disgusting.
They're finding it harder. I don't know. You can't. These people at the top, they're very, very, very clever, and you can see them even trying to put doubts in about Facebook, and then they'll start putting doubts in about the use of Twitter, and they'll start putting doubts in about using. In fact, they know they can clean up the internet. They know they can stop all these spams and all this nasty things that are going on. They know they can do that, but I think they're deliberately allowing these things to happen because, again, of course, we may sort of think, oh, internet is really bad, so we stop using it. So they're very clever, but these are really amazing tools that we have, and we've got to remember that they are amazing tools and not to be manipulated or conned or tricked into thinking, oh, these things are bad for us now.
Yeah, can I just say something, John, about like your research and things? You know, back in the olden days, we would have to go to these sites, you know, find ancient books or scriptures or whatever we could find that way. Nowadays, it's a lot easier because we're so well better connected, you know, like people like you, people like Brien, and, you know, I mean, you can talk to each other, you can see a video that is there live, you know, and then you can discuss things and you can do live research, can't you? You know, and hey, I never thought about that, you know, and then look at this corner, you know, you see things that you don't quite see before, or see things with fresh eyes. It's always nice. So, yeah, I mean, we can only go forward in a sense until, like you say, the internet starts to get suppressed, or, you know, they start to hide things that they don't want us to see, you know, and they can easily do like you say, you know, they can easily clean it up, can't they?
Absolutely. They could easily, I mean, no, we're being monitored. I mean, I know I'm being monitored, and I know Brien has been monitored. I mean, and I know there's Miles Johnson who sets up these basis conferences that I take part in, and the guys who set up the Glastonbury Symposium. We're all being monitored. We know this, but we don't care because you know, the knowledge is getting out there, and as I keep the key thing I keep banging on about is we're all very clever. We're all incredibly clever, and genetically through the centuries, you know, where the maybe the massive knowledge was, say if you're talking about the early extraterrestrial stroke Homo sapien hybrid, basically the first humans, as they were probably our first so-called kings, if you like, or first leaders. But as we go through the centuries, we can see how the gene gets disseminated into the lower classes or the lower levels. And I think when E.T. had this ancient civilization back in the 13,000 years ago, I think it was a civilization based on love and kindness. And this is where you find that people like the Buddha and Socrates and Confucius, they obviously go back to sort of 2,000 years ago, but they maybe had access to information that we don't have, where they maybe saw that this sort of thing existed, this type of civilization. But of course, once the flood had destroyed, had basically created this massive, if you like, disruption, massive tsunami that flooded over huge parts of the planet and so on, destroyed the civilization, then obviously there'd be a few left that would try to salvage the what they had, and I think then this is where we then end up with this kind of society that we have now, which was led really by people who could survive, and obviously we know what happens. It's people who survive are usually very clever, are very strong, are very powerful, and so on. And I think these particular guys who survived also held on to this amazing knowledge. They knew this. They knew about all these flights and where they came from, and all this amazing technology and how they can. I mean, you look at how they built these pyramids and so on. They're just unbelievable. You just cannot see anybody 4,000 years ago. When you look at what was happening in the UK 4,000 years ago, the kind of Stone Bronze Age, to think that human beings 4,000 years ago had the ability to build these things. It's clear that the Egyptian civilization is a civilization in decline. I mean, they weren't. I don't think they were developing anything. It was just knowledge was being people coming along and picking up bits of knowledge that were there and finding that obviously they could use it. And if you look back over the centuries, people have always been clever. I mean, you just look back and people have always been clever within their particular culture and within their particular time and on the planet.
They understood much more how to use being here with free energy, with the plants, with the sun.
Yeah.
They were much more seemingly much more in tune with what these things were.
Well, yes, because I think this is the other thing that we've lost today is we've kind of lost this ability to be, how I keep putting it, sort of look after yourself, and self-discipline. And we're so, this has been taken away from us all the time. You kind of not really, you don't really have to look after yourself. This kind of being responsible for yourself, this self-responsibility, that was always there back in the day. But it's just this last few generations that that they've taken us away. You don't have to be responsible. No, you can. We'll look after you. We'll look after you. We'll make sure you eat all these snacks, and we make sure you smoke these cigarettes, and we make sure you do this and this and this.
Can I say, John?
People just hand themselves over to this sort of stupid ideas, which never happened in previous generations.
Yeah. Can I just say, I think that we've kind of lost our way with nature. I think that's what's happened. I think a long time ago we were more in tune with nature and with nature all around us, and ways that we could use it. And I think we've lost that.
That is an absolutely brilliant thing to say. You're absolutely brilliant. Absolutely right.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to find back again, isn't it? Find our way.
And we need nature. We need all these things, and we're destroying. We need them. We need them on the planet, and we need to understand why they're important, but we don't. You're absolutely,
crazy
absolutely
thing
right.
is, like they've got in space, we've got a car going off to Mars. They're always showing us the ISS space station. There's all this, and they want us to sort of in that vision of looking up, when really we need to be going down. They've done the complete opposite. They've kept us. They didn't want us to learn what the pyramids really were and all that. They didn't want us to realise there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things.
No, they don't want to. They don't want to find out. To find out the truth. And I mean, say 20 years ago, if I came up with my theory, I would have been viewed as a crackpot by many people. It's just that a lot of my friends who I work with knew I was fairly stable, fairly intelligent person. So they thought, well, that's funny. There must be something in this. So they would read what I had to say and thought, oh, that's interesting. And but it was very easy for, again, the elites establishment to. It's interesting how they label people that they don't like. So if they don't like you, you're a crackpot, or they want to discredit you. They'll show you a horrible picture of you, or I'm talking here more about people like politicians, like Donald Trump's classic. I mean, you never see a decent photograph of him because they constantly want to discredit him.
The Star paper did that to me. No one's ever going to recognise me after those pictures they put up.
There you go.
They took about 60 pictures of me, and those were the best ones. No one will ever know it's me. They were horrible.
There you go. But yeah, if you see I call them the Hmong royals. You're talking about Harry and what's her name, Meghan. Then they get the best photographs you can never see, and they're shown in the best light and all the rest of it. But what are they? Who are they? I mean, they're not. I don't know. They're like Prince Andrew and these people. They're just biggest benefit swindlers out.
All a distraction, isn't it? All the time in the game.
It's a nice distraction.
It's such a big game. I just can't believe that they want to live in this fantasy. It's all a fantasy.
Well, I can't believe how many people just can't wait for it's a wedding. It's a new royal baby, and there's all this stuff. I can't believe that that people are still swallowing all of that stuff. But there you go. We do. It's nicely packaged up. And the next thing I said to you, I think the last time we talked, is how they're going to promote Charles and Queen Camilla. They're going to be made sure that they're going to be shown off in the best light over the next few months. And if you look at the Commonwealth, they didn't want Charles as the next leader, but the Queen, she dictated at this specially arranged conference in Buckingham Palace, and of course, nobody would dare not vote for Charles to be the next leader of the Commonwealth, and nobody wants him to be the leader of the Commonwealth. Anyway, that's another.
Well, it's all part of the same thing.
Yes.
Just a layer of this matrix they've set up for us. Just asking you, what's your take? I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I wanted to ask Brien that, but we didn't get around to that. But what's your take on petrification? Do you think these things have been petrified? I mean, it can happen much quicker than we think it can. It can happen quicker.
How do you mean, what's petrified?
Maybe the pyramids.
Yeah.
Things.
That's a very good point, Karen. That's an interesting angle there. Yeah, it's a good. Yeah, I don't know. I just take it as being they were built out of block and so on. But yeah, they could. As I say about Stonehenge, that could be reinforced. I know, concrete mix and so on that they're poured into big wooden square rectangular wooden vessels.
Brien didn't think that they ever poured things. There was just so much of it, and so. Yeah.
But petrification is a good,
absolutely incredible to be pouring and making all these stones.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I add on to that and ask a question, Ms. Karen?
Cool, go for it, Josh.
Do you believe? Well, I've seen video of them like reconstructing Stonehenge in the '60s. Do you believe they put it together in a different formation? And also, when you went to the places like possibly in Egypt. Did you by chance go to the Temple of Luxor?
Yeah.
Excuse me. I was told that there's a mosque inside there, so they took another instance of them taking an old temple and putting a temple inside of it. Is that true?
Yes. Well, I think as Brien kind of touched on, a lot of these places all had positive energy, and how that arrived, I don't know. But you find all these places have massive positive energy, which is obviously good for the human brain, human learning. So you find at a place like Marlborough College, there's a thing called Merlin's Mine, which is an ancient, I believe it was an ancient pyramid. And then if you go through all the sort of important places, which are modern, like Salisbury Cathedral or any new church or cathedral, they all tend to be built on something that was already there, because of that particular massive amount of positive energy that's there. And these, of course, these things are all linked up, as we kind of know, to ley lines or whatever, universal energy lines, whatever you want to call it. So there's this huge network that we don't even, well, not me, but there's a lot of people know a lot more about these things than I do, but there's this amazing network that was almost an ancient Wi-Fi system that was out there. But yeah, so people just automatically, something fell down, they would rebuild something on top of it, or they didn't like it, they would knock it down, and an invading army would come and say, well, I don't really like that style because it doesn't suit our religion or our ideas, and they would knock it down and build their own. But it would still be pretty well on the same place. So I think this is probably the reason why these, and I think again, anybody who measures it, like we touched on Maria Wheatley, she'll be able to tell you all these places around the world that exhibit these areas of amazing positive energy, and where fantastic structures, megaliths, and so on are built on.
What's your take? I think we talked about it last time you came on, but what's your take with his first part of his question with Stonehenge?
So what was the first part of the question again, Carl?
I'm so sorry. Yes, sir. I'm so sorry. The first part was, do you believe that they could have reconfigured Stonehenge?
Yes. Sorry, Josh, I beg your pardon.
When they were reconstructing it?
Well, they did. Well, they actually reconfigured it in 1912. If you look back at the photographs of Stonehenge, the stones are in different places to where they are now.
Could it have possibly been 1812?
No, 1912, just before I think, no, sorry, maybe before that, 19, maybe just before, yeah, just before the First World War.
Yes, sir.
Some of the stones had fallen down, and they stood them up, but they put them in different places. If you look at old photographs of Stonehenge, if you go probably on Google, we talked about this earlier, everything's on Google. You go to old photographs of Stonehenge, you'll find it's not the same structure. Now, to answer your other question, yeah, before that, then I don't know, could have been moved again. I mean, Avebury stones, they've all been moved. They're not pretty well where they were. There was that guy called Keeler who came along and dug up the stones. They were actually buried underneath the ground, dug them up and placed them where they are today.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Do you know the other thing they don't show as well with Stonehenge is that there are a few mounds. There are a few mounds just off of it. They don't really ever show those. And then you've got Strawberry Hill. It's got these arkings in the ground. And then I found a mound. I was looking at the map and I found another mound a few miles away. And then we've got mounds along the A30. Oh my goodness, what is it? The A34, which goes down to Portsmouth and Southampton. There are mounds there.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned, Maria Wheatley, if you ever get her on your chat show on here on your Hangout, then she's had access to areas which are MOD ground. Salisbury Plain is basically owned by the MOD that very few people have had access to. So she's been able to get access to places and found things, barrows and stones and mounds and things that we. Even your English heritage archaeologists don't know anything about. So just exactly kind of as you say, there's a lot of things even around there above ground or still, still surviving. That what as I call it, this kind of Wiltshire complex.
Hey John, maybe you could write to her and ask her if she'll come on our channel, come on with you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can certainly.
We did actually speak about having her on a long time ago, Karen. I remember. But
yes, I think I may have given you her telephone number then, but I don't know if you got.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we have spoken about it.
Whether you did, or maybe you did in an email. Could you re-give it to me, or do you think because you know her a little bit, and you can say that we had Brien on, so that she knows that because obviously.
Well, as I say, I think if you don't mind me saying this, it's better coming from you.
Right.
And I think basically saying you know me and obviously with Brien then because you can obviously Brian's told you a lot more about his discussion with coming to see her and I'll be happy to come on with her, but you can obviously that to her. But I think
Can I be a pain then? Would you resend it to me, John?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Sorry. Let me just make a note of that because.
Thank you. And just asking you then because he told me something that I didn't know that around Silbury Hill and Glastonbury, wherever it was, there are these elongated skulls as well.
Well, this is why I was saying I think Maria and Brien will get on quite well because she's found some as well down in that area around Stonehenge and so on. And again, these are skulls that that were not. They're different. they're kind of, as you say, there's been quite a few found in South America down where Brian's area. And they're not human skulls, not human as we know them. They're quite different, and we have known of different species. Again, Brien touched on it. There's been different groups, if you like, and there's some we know have been very tall, and we know that we found some buried in Egypt of skeletons that have been way over 7 foot tall. So you're getting some very tall. Skeletons, and you're getting some with
he explained to us that generally the people were maybe 5 foot, 5'5", something like that. So if someone was 7, 8 foot tall, they would look like a giant.
That's right.
When we've done our research, the doorways, they look like they're for a 7, 8, 9 foot person, not a 15, 20 foot person. They do look like 8, 9, whatever, about that height.
Yeah,
they look like they're made for people that height. The doorways to some of these things. Yeah,
and I think there's some other intriguing thing is that they reckon that they did live longer then. They could live about they reckon people like Noah was about 200-300 years old, maybe even older. Some of you might know more about this than me, but there's a certain there's lots of intriguing things about the development of the human, as I would call it, after ET had arrived, how it developed via Homo sapiens.
What's your take on those skulls then? What's your take?
Sorry?
What's your take on those elongated skulls then?
Well, again, it's if ET arrived, let's just say, it's a bit like us. If we arrive, we take off and we land on Mars or whatever. Well, the human collection may not, because of the way we're moving forward, you have a different collection of human looking. I mean, would be people look like me, and then people look like Barack Obama, or people look like the Chinese guys or whatever.
How did we get from that kind of
just
skull?
different looking people arrived, and genetically, as I said in the last time we chatted, we don't know how they maybe genetically manipulated the genes to create the human type. What they wanted, did they specifically need somebody taller with a bigger elongated head for a specific function? Were they the sort of the scribes or the intelligent, were they the architects or whatever? And were they clever enough to develop and design people to fit particular jobs? And in fact, we can see that this is where we're heading. We're heading down that route where we can probably manipulate the human genetically.
Well, if
Brother
they
John.
have. Oh, carry on,
Oh,
Josh.
sorry.
No, you go, Josh.
Brother John, have you ever heard of any of these ancient cosmologies and ancient history stories, prehistory stories that say that we come from the North Pole, that all life is birthed from the Rupus Negra, from the black stone in the middle of the North Pole? There are other stories as well, but the fact that the Hopi, the Mayan, the pre-Kemetic tribes, there's a lot of tribes that all believe that we come from the North Pole as one, and we separated once we did our first exodus, if you will. Yeah.
Well, that's Graham Hancock. He has this idea that in one of his books, I can't remember which one, where we basically, again, as I made that point, when we had this disaster 10,500 years ago that completely changed the climate. So maybe the North Pole was a beautiful place ideal to develop this amazing civilization, and somewhere else on the planet, maybe the equator was, because I think the whole thing moved. That's why there's still a wobble on the planet. Again, you guys have got different theories and so on, but this is a thing that's backed up by the time, as it were. How there's have to adjust the time of the year from time to time because of this kind of wobble that happened. So maybe as ice caps start to melt, and so again, there may be an opportunity to find maybe Atlantis or whatever. This is basically Graham Hancock's theory. Maybe your point there is that there maybe is something that did this amazing place or area that.
Do you think that if, like, even though I know that we've talked before where you don't think that there was Noah or the Ark, and the Ark might have been something else, but do you think that we got washed here? That's what happened. There was a breach of water where there's flooding, and we are from what's got washed up here.
Yeah, we got separated. Definitely, we got separated, and we then had to develop according to how to survive. So we were separated, and again over the centuries, I don't think there were because you can see if the pyramids were built on every similar design and so on, as Brien would tell you, on every continent on Earth. So you can see almost a global civilization. But once we had this disintegration, then the powers that be decided we needed to have borders and we needed to have all these sort of things, which are all in their favor, because as soon as you have a border and a flag, and you then, again, mentioned this in the last time we talked, you then create an enemy. So we see this today. As soon as you want to discredit somebody, you say, oh, they like the Russians. But no, they don't necessarily, or they do in a positive way, but it's manipulated in a way that because Russians have always been shown to be portrayed as enemies over certainly our generations, and probably
But you know what they did?
they're probably the nicest people. There's some nice people there as well.
They've always wanted to turn the people against each other. Do you see what I mean? It's this programming.
Well, this is it. And this is why, as I say, they produce a king or a monarch, and they produce a flag. You've got your flag and your anthem, your music, and you all stand up and you see at the Olympic Games with the flags and all the rest of it. And it's exactly right. It's all used to separate, to keep us, separate. And I don't know. And most of us want to get back together, but as soon as you put a border in place, I think I watched a program about a year back about Scotland and England, and there was actually there's two borders. There's one border down near Yorkshire, and there's another border up near Perth, but quite high up. So basically, Scotland and England was divided into three places. They did have names, and I can't remember what they were. But eventually that became one border, because I think you go into the Roman situation and so on. Again, there's history, which I can't really get into. But you just thought, well, why would you need a border at all? Historically, they produced this way back in the day, and if you didn't have a border, then as we evolved, we would just probably all get on a lot better.
But there is this sort of history around us that obviously people in the UK who aren't here, because obviously we have counties, and not like America, the states, but we have counties, and supposedly each county had a king.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know any of it's true anymore.
Yeah.
So you're from Ireland, right, John?
Sorry?
Scotland.
You're from Ireland?
Scotland.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. I get I'm so terrible with the accents. I can only assume and then be correct.
Very mistake to make. A very easy confusion to have. Yeah, no, I don't mind.
Yes, sir. Does that mean that you were you a young man when the IRA and all that garbage was going on?
Yeah.
So you experienced that, huh? You saw people trying to fight for their land and being taken over by the elite, by the powerful, basically. The weak being overthrown by the powerful, the few being destroyed, or the many being destroyed by the few in that instance. Yes, sir. I hate to even think of that. It breaks my heart, but it's something that it's not even taught over here in our schools. America, we have no idea what the IRA is. And when we did learn of it, we're told that they were a terrorist group. Isn't that something terrible? Like, now, I'm sorry for taking it off course, but I heard the accent.
That's a very good point.
The question's been on my brain since I jumped in.
No, that's a very good point to make. And I think, you think, well, terrorist group, and you think, well, if you drop explosives on a place like Baghdad about 100 times the tonnage that we dropped on London and during the Blitz, then you're bound to get people upset and wanting to attack your country and do all sorts of things to it. And I mean, why Blair and Bush, and this is a whole other area which we've all been into, why they went ahead with that sort of nonsense, and why, and we're in this huge mess now because of that. And I thought when we got into the 21st century, 2000, and to the 21st century, I thought, this is a great opportunity to get things together, bring people together. And the first thing that happened pretty well is these idiots. I mean, Saddam Hussein I believe he had cancer, and he wouldn't have lived a lot more years, and you could have just waited until he passed on, and then you could have maybe had some influence on the next leader. But there was no need to flatten the place and destroy all this amazing ancient culture.
Absolutely.
This is part of the matrix. It's all part of the game. You learn that these countries were running water, they weren't in debt, they had a civilization that we don't even have, and they've all destroyed them and flattened it all to the ground. Syria, you've just done it to whoever they want. You don't want to fall into the program. Yeah.
Sister Karen, what I've always said is, if you made the people that make these decisions be the ones out there fighting, put just sticks in their hands, no weapons that they kill each other with. You make these men and women fight each other with sticks, and you'll see how quick these things don't go down. How quick diplomacy goes on,
Yeah. Well, that's what they reckon. That's what the comment was. If there's another world war, the fourth world war will be fought with sticks and stones.
I think if we politicians, we'd do better off. You know, if we let's say if we got rid of at least half of them, things would be a lot better. You know.
Mm-hmm.
It's all set up not to work. Like, just diversing a little bit onto what kind of thing these matrix things do. You know, like with the banking thing, with the PPI thing. But I'm not even one of those. I'm someone who had wrong charges put on my bank account. I never asked for that PPI. I never signed anything for it. And then they've lumbered a great big fraud into PPI. But anyway, the banks don't want to deal with it. They send you to the ombudsman. The ombudsman make you wait 4 years, and then they go, "Oh, sorry, it's out of the timescale and we can't help you." So you've got a whole government body being paid to do nothing. I told them this. I told them they all should resign.
Mm-hmm.
You see, but I didn't realise how big it was. But I'm just saying that there's a whole government body being paid to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they do. This is it. But it's so horrible, this matrix that we're in. This is just, this is absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That some of us are awake and understand how deep and horrible it is, but many still at the moment are just so closed off and dumbed down and watching that television.
Which is getting worse and worse. But people are, yeah.
All of us, though, you know, like I got 4 little ones, and I try my best to make them into 4 little kings and queens. You know, I think that our next generation is going to be even better than we have been. And my generation, I'm only 30, and I think my generation is doing real good. We're shaking things up. I think that the next generation is going to shake it up real good.
I think so. I agree with you. I think we've got to go full circle. I think I hate to admit this, and again, it's one of these things. I've done my best, but there's nothing I can't. You know, I don't want to go into politics because I think it's the biggest waste of time. I don't want to get. You know, how do you? As Karen said, how do you change things? How do you? The only thing you can do is to try and put forward, as we've been doing, put forward ideas for the next generation to come along and pick and take on board or develop or whatever. And I think they will. And I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm hopeful that Josh, you said, I'm hopeful that your children will get into a world that will get better.
And then all it takes is us, you know, all it takes is teaching them these babies to love, not prejudge, not be any of these monstrous things that society puts on us. And we've won. I feel that society, those social things are what drives us apart. It's not really, you put a bunch of children from a bunch of different countries that are 2 years old together, and these children won't know no difference. They'll all babble to each other and all get along. It'll be a beautiful thing. Now, with that being said, those invisible lines on the ground, those invisible lines between us, they just need to be diminished. They need to be what they are, invisible.
But it's kind of saying there that they're constantly being reminded. And it's just a small, just a small group of people. We're talking about here about a group of people who are running the media, the media moguls, the politicians, and so on. And they are all constantly, if you like, anti-kind, anti-love, you see these films. I mean, I never even look at these films. I even the horrible films. The language in them was terrible, and all the rest of it. You know, you look at the newspaper headlines. There's no stories that are. You get the odd story that's really kind and really funny and really amusing, and you think, well, there's no humor. It's all gloom and doom and murder and mayhem and all the rest of it. And this is just This is just coming from really a small group of people. And again, as Karen said, all we need to do is to stop reading these papers, stop buying these papers. Stop watching these television programs, sell your television or whatever, and then they'll go away.
Absolutely.
Well, and then we can enjoy ourselves, and our families and other children. But you're right. I mean, I traveled in my career. I traveled the world, and I met people in deepest, darkest Cairo with a Manchester United shirt on or a football shirt on, and they just love football. And you talk about football, and they would be because something we could identify with, or we could, and
it transcended any barriers.
Some of the kindest people I ever met were the poorest people. Sorry, George.
No, I'm sorry for interrupting. I was just saying that it transcended any barriers. I'm so sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
You're not fine. No, I'm just the last comment making there was that I say that the kindest people I met are the poorest people, and I feel really sad at the moment that we all the kind of the poor people in your country and in our country donate millions and billions of their hard-earned money to charities, and we're getting these scandals now to show how these people are just having a laugh. Really, they're taking the money and they're having a bit of their huge expenses, huge salaries, and
0.025% to actual donations, and the rest goes in their pocket. You better know it. Exactly, sir.
Yeah. And I just feel so sad because these people, I mean, they're just so generous. I mean, and that's what most people are like. It's only when you get sucked into the elites of the establishment that they operate project greed. And once you get involved with project greed, then it's a nasty. You turn into a fairly nasty person, really. And I come across them. Obviously, you will. They're not generous with themselves, and they're not generous with other people. And
not being. I hope I don't seem to sound rude at all here, but it is really nice having you on, because there's not that many people. Like, you're a few years older than me. There's not many people older. It's sort of, probably Josh's. It's really great that you are awake.
Oh, I feel Josh has got a lot harder job than I had.
Can I just interrupt you there, Karen and John? It's actually very refreshing that you've been, obviously you're a senior citizen, I would say, if you don't take offence at that.
I'm indeed, and I do take no offence to that.
Thank you. But it's a pleasure to see someone your age that is wide awake. I mean, you're on the button, man. I know you are. It's brilliant that you're like that, and hopefully it can transcend across generations. Like Josh is saying, he's trying to educate his children to be the best they can be, and to love one another and to care for each other, change the world that way, because we have to be the change we want to see, as the saying goes. That was it.
No, that's brilliant. No, that's absolutely. We can do it. We have to do it, really, because I think we've got a little planet, and of course you may not accept this from you, but I think we will, because we will go back to where we came from. I believe we came from the stars somewhere. It may not have been that far away. I mean, if they start discovering ancient monuments on Mars, that maybe Mars was once a vibrant.
We don't believe any of that. Most flat earthers don't believe that's real up there.
No.
They are just like wandering stars, and that what you see is what you see.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
I don't think you can. I just don't think you can go up there, John. Really, we'd be having pleasure cruises up there by now. It was the 1960s. They supposedly went to the moon, and you know how they like to make money. None of these things are happening, and they're still going up there in rockets. When you know that they've got levitation things, I mean, even the new Airbuses, they kind of levitate, or something's going on. It looks like a kid with a remote control on them when they're at air shows. That if they're doing that in commercial planes, what have they got in military stuff? So it's all just the stars and the planets and out there is just another one of those lies. It's just, like I say, I think a lot of it's to stop us looking down in the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just my kind of limited scientific experiences I had working in the computer industry, or the semiconductor, the technology side of it. You were aware that they're actually developing photon technology, where they're transferring one photon across into another space. Basically, this beam me up Scotty idea. And I remember asking one of the scientists who was working on this at the moment, say, well, would you get anybody to volunteer to, once you got to a fairly advanced stage of this kind of technology? And he said, yeah, they'd be queuing around the block to be the first one to get involved.
Well, I'm telling you, if they offered me a ticket to go to Mars, I ain't taking it, and someone else can take my place.
Well,
not because wouldn't we all love to think that it was whatever, but it's not. So you would die. That's what would happen to you.
Oh, well, I think this is well, maybe this is a thing that happens when you get older. In my case, is that now I'm much happier to go down to visit a place like Swanage or somewhere in the UK for a nice.
I think that's the nice part of all the stuff, like I told you,
or somewhere, rather than go to China or whatever, because So yeah, I think as a younger person, I might have thought, but certainly the idea of heading off in a rocket somewhere or however they do it, but they've got to be, but they, well, I don't know, it's just so interesting. I find it's all we live in a very interesting time, and to get even more interesting.
I just think it's so sad that they didn't spend the money telling us the truth and really finding out what we live on.
I think the problem is that we're a lot of politicians are very stupid people, and the politicians, they have no idea about business, they have no idea how to run anything, and you see them become head of some department, they've got no idea, the Department of Education, Department of Health or whatever, they've no idea, and why these departments or why these places, health service and education and so on, the rail, utilities are just run by the people who know what they're doing. I don't know. I don't know why politicians have to be involved, but there you go.
It's happened to you because you went in Silbury Hill, right? And you've got the British Historical Society wanting to ignore it all and pretend it's something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They made a documentary on Silbury Hill. Do you know what I mean? So they prepared, the lies are that big.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't want the truth coming out. They don't really want people like you or Brien telling us the truth and showing us all these other things and finding these things out. They don't want it. They don't want it in the public. They don't want people knowing about it.
They don't, but the problem is now, Karen, for them is they can't stop it. And you try to work out, well, how can they stop it? Well, they can certainly discredit Brien. They can certainly discredit me and say, well, he's just whatever. And but people will still be people like you and Josh and others that will think, well, hold on a minute, I've listened to these people. They're not as an establishment person would say, or a politician, they're not actually saying this is what to believe. We're saying these are ideas. They're only ideas. They're only theories. Because we don't know. We can only speculate. Because that's the sort of.
But that's the sad part, isn't it? What are we, 2018, and we're left with speculation?
Yeah.
I mean, the 1800s have really boggled me now. So many things were invented there, even contact lenses, 3D photography, poles in the sky with wires on, electricity. It's just like, although we moved on, there's a period of time where we almost sat still with, I suppose we had the First and Second World War. That was all to destroy things, just to destroy infrastructure. We've been almost flattened. The UK as well. Because once you know all these wars are lies and a part of a game, the Europe has been quite flattened.
Yeah, well, Europe's
that's all about money, isn't it? The wars, it's a controlled game. They feed both sides. They're making money. It's just about money, I was talking to a friend today as well about, from the day we're born, we're generating money, aren't we? We need nappies, we need food, we need clothes, we need shoes. From the day we're born. It's a consumer life we're living, We're just buying shit all the time. They'll make new shit we can buy tomorrow,
Yes, true. I think intriguingly that you talk about this, the First World War. Once that was finished, then that was the war to end all wars. There'll never be another war. But then a situation occurred which we have similar to today. They had somebody came through the ranks, totally unexpected, as we have with Donald Trump, a non-establishment person, not involved with elites, not involved with that, and they took them by surprise. They developed into a situation where they didn't have any control over it. And then once they got to a certain point, this is why we're interested to see what happened to Donald Trump. But in the case of Hitler, once he got to a certain point, they realized, oh my God, we've got to stop him because he's doing things that we don't want him to do, and he's got to change Europe and do all sorts of things. And so they pour all sorts of things and effort into to stop him. And you talk about discredit. Even today, you'll never hear anybody say anything positive about him. And I'm not saying, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not interested in Hitler or anything like that. I mean, I think he was what he was, but that's again the propaganda that you're led to believe. But he must have done something right. But you can never hear anything that he's done. And again, just as mentioned earlier, that was all obviously tied in with money and so on, of course. But I just think that was a point. The problem there was that this was somebody who came on the scene and developed that was not part of the establishment, part of the elite structure. And of course, they didn't like that and they wanted to stop him, and they did. Donald Trump is in a similar situation today. He's somebody that is completely rogue, as it were, as far as the elite establishment is concerned. And they're trying really, really hard to, Josh will probably know a lot more about this than me, but trying really hard to slow him down and to pretty well get rid of him.
Well, we had local elections last couple of weeks ago. We had ours early because someone had moved or something had happened, so we had to have ours early. But I went there, I filmed it, but I don't know why the film didn't happen. You know, didn't seem to record it, but I saw it recording. I don't know what happened. I went in there and I asked the ladies there why there wasn't a no box. You know, why couldn't I say I'm voting but no to them? And they said, "Oh, I didn't think of that." So there you go. That's the society we're in, because they don't, you know, people don't think about a lot of things.
But this is the thing, is that you talk about democracy. There's no, the thing that's made it clear in the last few weeks that there's no democracy in the UK. This whole political system is just it's because you found that a few weeks ago the MPs voted that they would have the final say on the Brexit deal. Now the Brexit deal was a democratic vote to leave Europe. Was the people voted to leave, but now that's been hijacked. The House of Lords tried to hijack it. A group of the privileged few, they wanted to hijack the Brexit negotiations, and now the MPs will have a final say on the outcome of Brexit, and it is not their right to have the final say.
Can I just say that we've got Wise Up in the chat room. Wise Up, he's a channel on YouTube, and he does a lot about metholithic structures and what he believes the mountains are. And do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah. He just feels like the pyramid, probably a lot of it's buried, but you believe that slowly Silbury Hill is collapsing, and it was a lot bigger. It's slowly sinking and collapsing a bit.
Yeah, that was the picture I showed before, wasn't it? Just about to see it there.
Yeah.
So that is probably a lot taller than that, but you can see that's what it looked like, and then underneath is obviously what it looks like today. So this is all collapsed down into, that's what it looked like originally, and then it's collapsed down into the mound today, and you can see it spread out across. But you see that bit on the top, bits of that was found inside the hill, and bits of the blocks up at the top here were found inside the top of the hill. So,
do you believe it was built on a hill anyway?
It was built on a flat. It would have been flattened. There was a flat spur. I mean, you can see from the contours. I did have it in some other presentation I did, but there was a contours to show that it'd probably been a flat area, or maybe even flattened it to build the. It was on a spur to build the pyramid on it, and I think there was water. You can see today, but I think that even though the climate's probably changed because of the reasons I've just mentioned before, there probably was water surrounding it when it was first built.
There is something I'd like to ask you about that, especially when you believe that they were, I don't know, making energy. It just seems that Silbury Hill has two tails which comes out of it, as if there's a positive and a negative sort of thing. Do you remember that part? And not all the pictures you see, it just looks like two, I don't know what you call them, legs come out of the pyramid and go into the land.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's just somebody's interpretation, really, of the energy that's maybe coming in and going out of the pyramid and the base. But certainly, the pyramid definitely produces energy, produces electrostatic energy inside the pyramid.
I just got a question for you because Wise Up's in the chat room, and he sees that a lot of these things that we're seeing the leftovers of, although we did this bit about electrical arcing with Brien, he agreed that these electrical arcings had happened, and if you were in the middle of it, you'd have been I can't think of the word, evaporated basically. But there are other parts which look like things are melting. Whatever was left was melting and stuff. Where's the question? Where is it? He's just put a question in there. He's asking, do you think it's eroded concrete, the pyramid? Silbury Hill.
Silbury Hill, eroded concrete. Well, it was certainly eroded stone. I'd say limestone. It would, rather than concrete, would be eroded stone. Yeah. It might have been concrete. I don't know. As again, back to you can only speculate as to what it was built of. But there was certainly evidence of limestone blocks in the top of the in the structure. And those are pictures that English Heritage actually took, but hid away. And I've got them. I mean, I've still got them.
The one bit that they did was they showed you like a spiral in there, didn't they? And they used it. They said that people were walking around it and going up because they have to keep it, that it's got to be back to the pagans and stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, this is it. It's all got to go back to the Druids or some. And it's always tied to religious ceremonies. It's always tied to death. It's always people ceremonies to do with people who are dying and moving on. And as I said to you in the last talk we did, I think a lot of these pyramids now what to do with birth and life. They're all generating, they're all kind of generating energy, generating life. And I think that's probably, I think that, again, I'd love to, I'm still working hard on my brain to work out, this subterranean chamber in the Great Pyramid and how that all fits together and how that works. I just can't get my head around it at the moment.
Yeah, Wise Up's put in the chat room. He says he doesn't feel. He feels that it wasn't built with natural stone. If eroded, it's concrete turned to limestone from the flood. Yeah,
well, yeah, I can't argue with that because I don't. As I said, that what I've seen is, as they say today, it's the largest man-made chalk mound in Europe, Silbury Hill, and they specifically call it chalk. Yeah. It's a fair question, but I don't know what the answer is now.
You do feel it's one of the oldest ones, though, don't you?
I do, yes. I think it's yeah. And what makes it intriguing, just what we've talked about before and we talked about today, this evening, is that it's just part of a huge complex. It's still there, but you go all the way down to Stonehenge, you go all the way across to all sorts of different structures and things that are still some signs left of things, but they're not 4,000 years old. I'm convinced they're, just because of the wear and tear on them, they're definitely a lot older than that. But again, as I keep coming back, this is just my speculation. Until we can produce a computerized program that can build a concrete or limestone pyramid and then watch pour water and wind and rain and that on it and work out how long it takes for it to become a mound, then that's probably the only way you can get a better guess. But
I know, because people like in that college, I realised that because I saw Merlin's Mound, I could see buildings around it, and then a few weeks ago I was looking it up, and Merlin's Mound is in Marlborough College. But when I went to look things up, everything lines up. Like Merlin's Mound is below, if you look at England, it's below. I don't even know we could be lying any which way, but on the map they've got, I looked on Google, it puts Merlin's Mound below, and then Stonehenge is below again. They all sort of line up.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. It's all kind of mathematical, huge mathematics. That's what I like to tell we call it today. Maybe had a different term for it. It's all just amazing calculations and mathematical technology, whatever you want to call it, that's gone in. It's all measured accurately. They do say there's been some pyramids being built and they haven't been in the right place, and they've kind of knocked them down and they've rebuilt them somewhere else, just slightly differently. And but there's been just incredible accuracy for whatever the reason is. And this again, come back. Brian's not here, but he probably linked that to the again, and you touched on earlier, to do with space, it's being seen from above. They're able to see from above and work out whatever the directions or the angles or the transmissions or whatever they need to get this thing produced in the right places.
I mean, a lot of people won't know that on the hillsides around in that area, Wiltshire, there is one the other side of Reading. That's supposed to be the oldest white horse. So that's in Berkshire. But these white horses, I hadn't really thought about them, because they sit there and you go, oh yeah, look at the white horse. I've been to some of them. But actually these things, you see them from the sky much better. What do you think the horses were for then? Go this way, go that way.
Well, yeah, it's like you got signposts to know where you are, and there's technology. I said earlier, Russian scientists have discovered that the pyramids were emitting seismic signals of different frequency from each separate pyramid. So if you were flying above that, you would say, oh, that's such and such a place, that's such and such. And there was comment that these pyramids were white-faced and they may have had things written on them or some kind of information on them. We just don't know. But then you just had other things like the Sphinx or other, you see the white horses or things, just to identify a particular area. Maybe white horses said, oh, there's the Wessex complex, let's fly in there and have a cup of coffee or whatever they drank back in the day.
Just for people who don't know, who are in the UK, all around this area are these chalk white horses, which are supposed to be thousands of years old. But John and I already talked about this. In England, when they get to a certain age, they always say 4,500 years, and they won't say anything else.
Yeah, they have to stick to the what their professors said and what the professors before them said, and professors and so on. So, and also it's part of this ritual of keeping us kind of fairly ignorant as to what's going on, and we all kind of 4,500 years ago, oh fine, that's okay. And a lot of people don't really care, because they just see it as a white horse. It's very intriguing when you see it. Just something like a Whispery is quite amazing, quite big, quite large.
I can't wait for the day when they change that board at the bottom of Silbury Hill to say something completely different than pretending what it is, if you know what I mean. I'd love that board to say, this is a pyramid. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, but since I started, it was always a hill, and but I've seen lots of articles and things now talking about Silbury Hill being a pyramid, not just coming from me.
Until joining this group and getting into all this stuff, because I've sat on top of Silbury Hill, I don't remember there being a hole. I walked over the top of it. There was no hole, or not even like, I don't remember even like a dent, nothing. But I thought I got it. I thought I got the answer, because supposedly at Avebury there are 2 circles. Well, there was, but what it is one of them has been destroyed for all the houses which now are there. So these houses are not 5-10 years old. These houses are 200-300 years old. So they destroyed one of the circles that amount of time ago to make the houses. Yeah, I actually thought that I'd got it. I thought Silbury Hill was then all the earth from the moats, but they're not moats. They're electrical arkings in the ground. Yeah. And this is probably called, this helps with the energy, and that's what they are. So I was like, and then there's a shop there that had a painting up that actually, excuse me, everybody, Avebury basically was the internal organs of a woman, the reproductive organs. So the fertility dance was to sort of, oh my goodness, excuse me, go up the entrance, and then there's the two fallopian tubes, and then they went that way or they went that way, and whatever. It's a fertility thing, but of course that's not true either, probably, is it?
Because I said all the way through this evening, it's all they don't know. They're speculating, but they're changing into fact. And you mustn't do that. You can't, unless you're having a bit of fun and you want people to turn up for a dance and so on and whatever. But you got to be responsible to these people you're talking to, and not lead them astray or lead them on with something. It's just you don't know. There's no fact. But people can believe that, and then they think, oh yeah, it's that. It's a fertility place, and they go there, and then they kind of immerse their lives or their ideas in something which they don't. That somebody else has told them, but they don't really know. I see them sitting there from time to time, sitting there with their hands out or whatever, and with all sorts of fertility things around them and so on, for some reason, good reason, I'm sure. But we just don't know. That's my belief is that it's all kind of to do with some kind of major technology, some scientific that.
Just
asking. It's not whimsical. It's not a whimsical religious ritual site.
It's something else.
This is too simple an explanation which they pass out. It's far more complicated than that. Yeah.
Just asking you, because we're getting on a bit now, and I know that you're probably feeling a bit tired. So I do understand that you probably don't want to stay on too much longer. But this whole thing with Silbury Hill, there's more of it that we haven't found yet. Yeah, there's going to be more pyramids, more everything, isn't there? If they haven't been destroyed or whatever.
Well, that's my hope. My hope is that, as I said again, and I said to you before, that we will find things that we haven't discovered yet, probably still buried underneath. I mean, you don't have to go dig too far down, even in Egypt, to probably find some amazing things. But once the technology improves to penetrate, look under the surface, then I think. Josh touched on it before. I think it'd be exciting times for the new generation to come along and maybe discover these things. And if they are shown properly, and if they are excavated using proper forensic science techniques, and not amateur aristocratic archaeologists in the past, but proper people who know what they're doing, then we will get evidence. And I'm convinced that we will get evidence to show that my ideas are maybe fairly. I'm going to be very arrogant here, but my ideas are fairly close to the truth, because I can't see any other explanation. And I have tried to listen to everybody I talk to and try to find out what, how did humanity start, or why are we so clever, or how are we developing, doing all these amazing things, when our nearest relative, the chimpanzee, he's just genetically only sharing 97% of our genetic material, and yet we're so clever.
Yeah, with this consciousness, but I don't know. Maybe we're getting too clever. As long as they don't reset us again because we've got too clever, they want to obviously keep us in a certain place. It's like we're living in a film. Because there's so many lies, and they're prepared to keep these lies going.
This is the point I think Josh made earlier, is that we got a responsibility to our children to try and not let the leaders of Facebook or not let the leaders of Google dictate really our future, because if we do, it's not going to be great, because it's going to be the very wealthy and the very rich kind of looking after themselves very comfortably, and then the rest of us almost might as well get robots to do the things that they would be asking us to do. So what do we do with those who have kind of slipped down away from the top echelons? And that's going to be interesting. I think one thing that I've kind of looked at over the years is population control, and even David Attenborough who's obviously a big proponent of saving the planet and species, and that he never makes a big deal out of doing something to do with controlling population, because he's part of the establishment, and yet he would have been a fantastic mouthpiece to say, look, we have to share the planet, and we have to find ways of not having. I mean, we've gone from whatever it was, 4 billion to 6 billion to heading up to 10 billion people.
We don't know if they're telling the truth about all those things either. You know, they like fear, they like to do things, they like to lie, they like to pretend, they like to tell you that this is happening and that's happening and you've got to hate them, when none of it's true. None of it's true in the first place.
No. I think the only thing I can see just in my own little patch around this kind of the UK, Britain or whatever, is that you look at the National Health Service and you can't see a doctor for 3 weeks, or you look at this and you can't get on it. I mean, I would try to go on a train on.
Yeah, we're almost on our knees here. That's how
I tried to get on a train on Saturday to go to Bath from Bradford.
Almost on its knees. It can't cope. It's nearly on its knees. It's just not working. None of it's working. If you're in it and you've got to do something like, say, get another house, you're waiting on a council, all of it is just an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Can I ask you something? Without being rude again, because obviously you are a little bit older, do you actually see in the last 5-10 years a shift happening now that people are waking up, that more people are realizing pyramids, the truth, the lies, the death certificate, just the television? Do you see a shift happening?
Oh yes, yeah. I think my only concern is I do see it can be very quickly, again, because our subconscious memory is full of all our generational, going all the way back, and what would come with this baggage of information in our subconscious memory. I think that it can be manipulated. Like as I said before, it's our royal wedding or our royal baby, and all of a sudden nobody cares anything about the royals. And all of a sudden, oh yes, a royal. And so we kind of get, because that they trigger that particular part of your subconscious memory. And I'm just trying to hope that we can try and, this is part that talk I had the other week, this realization thing, that we realize that we've got this subconscious memory that can be manipulated, and we've got to try and get control of our own minds, our own kind of future, back to our own selves. And I think once people start to do that, and I am seeing that, answering your question, I'm seeing more and more people beginning to realize, I've got to take control of my mind. I'm not going to, the number of people who very quickly, something goes wrong, straight to the doctor, something goes wrong mentally, and you see it all the time now on television. You've got to go and see a psychiatrist, or there's got to get some mental illness or whatever, and you're creating so the number of people now going for checkups for mental health issues are just quadrupling and doubling and whatever, going crazy, because we've introduced this idea, and we're all mentally ill, or we've all got mental problems. But it's
kind of is the nanny state, isn't it?
That's right. We're all got things. But you sort out yourself. You sort things out yourself.
Yeah, but that's about being a bit more responsible for yourself. And you can only do that if you know yourself. And that subconscious, if you don't know who you are, and there's every problem you've ever had in your life, your subconscious is going to play masses of games with you in the first place. So you have to know who you are. And then you can look at all this stuff. Well, if you don't know who you are, you're never going to believe anything.
Yeah. So come back to just what was asking your question. I think there are more people, just as you've described, who are beginning to latch onto it, and as I said, you don't have to do anything. I mean, you don't have to tell them, the establishment of the elite, what you think. They think, he's going along, or she's going along with this idea. We've fooled her, but they don't know that you've latched onto it, and you know what they're up to, and you know how they're playing these games, and you're actually, you don't have to say anything. You just know you're doing your own thing, and you just have to have a tougher mindset to be more discriminative, and again, you touched on the point. You said we've got to be get more responsible for your own thoughts, your own ideas, and if you think something's right for your children, that's right, that's good. Think about it, but you don't have to be manipulated by somebody else telling you what to do when it's clearly in their interest, not in your interest.
I mean, maybe it's better someone, I mean, I know that where you are with things as well, but say Brien Foerster said, I'm a flat earther and I'm doing all this. Maybe he would have hit much more of an obstacle. Maybe sometimes it's better to stay independent. But I was a bit surprised that he doesn't actually get more problems. No, you can't come here. No, you're going to tell the truth. you know, and as far as he's concerned, he's going to keep going with what he uncovers, you know, places that they haven't shown you yet. Like he did say that he paid people and he saw things that other people didn't see.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I found that I could talk to people and see people that go to talk conferences and things that are very establishment based and so on. I can ask. I've got to be very careful how I ask questions and whatever, and how I talk to people. But in the main, it's changed. In the past, you would get kicked out, or you'd be booed or shouted at, or whatever. But now, I think there's just a bit of a fear now. Well, hold on a minute. We better be careful how we handle this guy, because actually he might be right, and maybe there's a change of foot, and so there's definitely something happening. There's definitely a.
Well, we this group, we like the fact that we're diverse. We try to be open to it all, and you've kind of got to be fair. Like you pointed on that earlier on. We have to just stay quite open-minded.
Yeah, no, I think you've got a brilliant group. I think you know, and I think the fact that you put this out, you're putting this out there, and you're in your group, they don't mind, and they're happy to put forward their ideas, their thoughts, and get involved in the discussion.
But it wouldn't happen without people like you, John.
That's
so
great.
We have to say thank you very much to you as well.
No, that's my pleasure. And I was very pleased to touch base with Brien, and I say hopefully I'll catch up with him on the 18th of September. And I must admit, I did make a note. Yeah, I must send you Maria's address.
Thank you.
Well,
if it's not right in the middle of a work day, I'm going to go. I've got to go.
Yeah, let me know. Yes, I'm going to say if I nearly said that to Brien when he spoke about it.
Actually,
the 18th of September, some days there, because also good for you to meet the manager of the hen shop. He's a really brilliant guy, and he's asked me to go over and do some talks there, which I must get involved in. But Philippe, he's a really nice bloke. He's a Belgium actually, but he's now pretty well living in Avebury now full time with his wife Dominique. So they're a lovely couple. But if you meet them, you'll like them.
Oh, thank you, John.
Very good. So I can introduce you to, if you're there, if we get a chance to see Brien, you can meet up with Maria, and
I'd like to meet you as well.
Yes, well, that'd be good as well. Yeah, and and you'll be able to get a face-to-face discussion again in a little group like that. Would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Astral, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but it was touching on, like, this, what you're saying. People are more aware of what's going on now, and that we're able to go into these buildings like what you've done, and like what Brian's done as well, and to see exactly how things are, and to open it up for like general population, and like I said, I was in the pyramids years ago. I went down a little tunnel that you're not supposed to go down. It was only me and my girlfriend went down there, and some guy. But do things like that. If you get an opportunity to investigate something, take some pictures or make some readings or whatever, do it. Just do it, because that opportunity may never come again,
No. And that person like yourself, might just see something and just flip a switch in your brain that says, "Oh, I've seen something like that before." Or I don't know. It's just they
link together.
You just don't know how. It's all because it's all there. We're all very clever, and we can all. I think we can get there. We can discover. Well, I think it's really exciting.
I think what they've loved doing is I made this myself, because I found one of these footage of NASA, and they're supposed to be on their first trip outside, and one of them is paused. So they weren't together, it wasn't real, and it's CGI. But if you've got to go that far to lie to the people, then you're making a false reality that you're making people believe, which isn't real, it's a fantasy. So to me, it was like, this is how they take the people's freedom away, because they're making you believe something that's not real. And this is what they seem to love doing. It's always, like everything is not real, and they're implanting it that it's real into you when it isn't. And people, I don't know, people in the chat room, maybe you as well, Astral, Patricia. We just want to know the truth. We want to know more about these other generations, the pyramid people, the structures. You know, like we want to know more about these things. Really do.
Yeah, I think the last thing to say to you all is that that we have a personal responsibility to tell the truth. I mean, I've come across people like Colin Andrews, who were very much in the crop circles, and he was making up stories that seen aliens on Silbury Hill and so on, and Photoshop things, and like he's obviously trying to promote and sell his book. And I just thought that was despicable. We have a huge responsibility to be honest. I mean, not to make things up, not to distort things. People have said to me, "Oh, when you were in Silbury Hill, did you find those amazing energies? Did you find this? Did you find that?" And in all honesty, some people may well have found energies, but I didn't. I didn't find anything that had created any movement within my structure. I tried to feel things, look for things, and so on, but I was just in awe at what I could see, but I couldn't really feel anything. And so I didn't come out saying, "Oh yeah, there's this amazing energy, this amazing stuff," and I felt I was in Egypt, and I felt I'd gone back in some kind of.
Did you feel it when you go?
So that was just a lie, and that you cannot tell. You must tell the truth at every point, because people do listen to you and people do believe you, and that's the golden rule I found over the years, is that just tell it as you've seen it, and don't embellish it, don't distort it.
Or have you been to the Stones? I bet you have, or you must have. Did you feel anything there? Because there are certain places you go, and that to me was one of them, because I've been there a few times. You know, you have this feeling of awe, whether it's what's in the Stones, because there's different levels and there's different things. I mean, they're even lying about the stones. They've got different energies in those stones. They knew what they were doing with those stones. You know, there's an awe there. There's certain places. There's just this awe which comes over you, a peacefulness.
Yeah, there is. I was certainly sitting. I found as I put my hand down the stone, the temperatures changed at different points. It felt cool and hot and cold and things, but there was a different. And Maria Wheatley, she did explain and did show how she could move a magnet down the stone, and it would change the polarity as she moved down the stone. So that stone you'd think is one piece of stone, but somehow it was layered, or somehow it had been programmed. I saw
someone using a dowsing stick, and they were moving maybe that person you were talking about, but they were moving the dowsing stick up and down, and the 3 points of the stone, the dowsing stick moved round.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly the thing I was talking about. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. Thank you so much, John.
Well,
it's always a pleasure.
Nice to talk to you all again, and I say thanks for introducing me to Brien. I look forward to catching up with him later on in the summer.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. It's brilliant listening to you. Very, very, very good.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, guys. Thank you very much for having me again. Thank you.
Thank you, my darling.
Bye now.
Bye, darling.
Bye now.
Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Yeah, bye.
Patricia. No.
Karen, I can't believe I've just said, thank you, John. Bye, John. Love you. And I forgot to unmute my mic.
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, I really enjoyed that. That was really nice because, you know, we've never met Brien Foerster before. I couldn't believe how laid back he was. Because I know he's laid back on his videos, but, you know, he's really laid back bloke. He even puts his videos out once every 4 days. Pretty good, isn't it? Anyway.
Great to hear from him.
Yeah. Is there anything, Astral, or you want to say? Because I think we've been going for nearly 3 hours now, so... Is there anything you'd like?
I'm good. I've been informative. It's always informative. It's always, isn't it? I hope the chat room had fun and have learned something. It's been good. Thank you.
Yeah, I've learned that there are elongated heads at Silbury, all around that complex. Wow, we've got them here as well. Patricia, is there anything you'd like to say?
Not really, but just to thank everyone for listening and comments and stuff. It's always great to have other people involved. I know they're not technically on the panel or anything, but just nice that people are listening, and you know, we've had some fantastic guests on, and I just want to tell everyone that I love them all, and I hope you have a good rest of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever.
You have to include everybody, don't you? And every time. But we love you, Patricia, and love you, Astral. And thank you to everybody in the chat room. Been watching the comments. Wise Up was there. It was brilliant. Thank you so much, and we'll be back soon. So goodbye, everybody. Mwah!
Bye.